My bad. Dana, you with us?
All right, Mayor Stevens, we are now live.
Great. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Welcome to this East Lansing City Council regular meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll? Keep in mind our new rules regarding virtual meetings.
Councilmember Babcock.
Present, attending virtually from my home in East Lansing, County of Ingham, State of Michigan.
Councilmember Bacon.
Ron Bacon, virtual, East Lansing, Michigan, Clinton County.
Councilmember Watson.
Here virtually in East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Mayor Pro Tem Greg.
I'm here attending virtually from East Lansing and Ingham County.
Mayor Stevens.
Present, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan and Ingham County. All right, thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, great. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting on the January 5th, 2021. Is there a motion on that or any changes to those minutes?
Motion to approve minutes from January 5th.
Okay,
Second.
wonderful. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Great. Our next item on the agenda is communications. Written communications are posted on the online agenda packet under the tab written communication, a little link right there. And after that, our next item is communications from the audience. Keep in mind the time limit right now for communications virtually is 5 minutes. I will be holding people to that. If you have questions for us on the council, just wait until after your statement's done and we'll try to answer them right as we go. So, all right. Emily, would you mind letting in any callers?
Caller with the phone number ending in 963, you are now permitted to address council.
Hi, Alice Jagger for East Lansing Info. Apologies to the Mayor Pro Tem who already heard me say this at DMB today. Eli is doing a Spend Locally series and we're not stopping just because the holidays are past. We recognize that local businesses need us to keep going. So we've done 43 articles in the series. I really have to give credit for that to our managing editor, Emily Joan Elliott, who's been doing a phenomenal job, and our reporter, Sarah Spohn, who's taken the big bulk of these stories. We're happy to do stories on local businesses anywhere in East Lansing. We are also happy to do features that are about sales or special deals, collaborations. We did one about the collaboration between, for example, College Bill textbook and SBS. We're happy to do things about GoFundMe projects. Whatever people want to pitch to us, we're happy to pick up. It doesn't cost businesses anything, of course. It's except about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of time with a reporter, which we're happy to do by phone to make it super easy for businesses. We deal with the photography, we deal with the reporting, we push it out on social media. So we're really happy to do this work, and anything we can do to support city staff in terms of their work getting people to local businesses to spend locally. Tomorrow we have a piece queued up by Andrew Graham regarding the crowdsourcing project that's trying to raise $50,000 plus also the gift card, urging people who have bought the gift cards to go ahead and spend that money locally. So anything we can be doing, please channel our way. You can contact us through the website, eastlansinginfo.news, and we're super, super happy to bring information. So please send us ideas. We're happy to duplicate even if we've already covered a business. If there's something new about that business that we can cover, we will absolutely do that. So thanks, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. Definitely seen a couple of those articles, and those are obviously any publicity for those businesses is really great. And seconding the statement regarding gift card and spending. Definitely great that folks are buying them, but also have to spend them, so make sure that that money gets to businesses. Thank you for that. Emily, would you mind letting in the next caller?
Caller with the phone number ending in 753, you are now permitted to address council.
Good evening. This is Edmund Rushton calling, and it's going to be short and sweet today. I just got one question real quick, and then if you don't mind, I've just got a follow-up to that after. And so I'll just start very quickly by asking each one of you, and I would like all of you to answer if you can. And if you don't know, if you don't know who this person is, nothing bad about you personally. What I'm trying to make a point of here is education on something in our community that very, 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 very few people know about. It's information that I happened on myself by mistake. So I'd just like to ask you all, do any of you know who Earl or Louise Little is or was? Does the name Earl or Louise Little, do any of you recognize that name?
Yes.
I recognize the name, and I'm trying to figure out why, but apologize.
I do, yes.
No.
Biological parents of my kindergarten teacher's adoptive brother. Thank you.
Okay. All right, and you had a follow-up. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So actually, y'all did pretty well on that, much better than the Lansing City Council earlier. Earl Little is more famously known in the history books as the father of Malcolm X, and he was a recruiter for the UNIA, which was an organization headed by Marcus Garvey. Earl Little and his wife Louise were both massive contributors to that organization and to the social progress that organization created. Louise was a journalist for them and would write essays, and also worked part-time as a secretary for the UNIA. Earl was a traveling preacher, traveling minister, who would spread ideals of Black power, Black liberation, and Pan-Africanism. And on September 38th, 1931, Earl Little was lynched at the corner of Michigan Avenue and Detroit Street at the eastern edge of Lansing. Earl Little's family had to flee Lansing earlier, and they also had to flee East Lansing after they fled Lansing. And eventually his presence in the community was too much for the white supremacist institutions to bear, and he was killed. And so I'm calling in today because in the next coming weeks, a resolution is going to appear pretty soon that I believe you will have to vote on eventually, and it will be a holiday in East Lansing on September 28th. We will be proposing a holiday that East Lansing institute a holiday every year, September 28th, to recognize the Little family, both Earl and Louise. And I guess to leave you with, I'll just say if any of you have any thoughts on the potential of this holiday becoming a reality, or on what happened to the Little family, on the demise of the Little family, I'd love to hear them. So thank you very much.
If folks don't mind if I start, thank you for calling in. I actually think that's a great idea. I actually really, really do. I have to obviously look in to the history a little bit more myself, get a little bit more acquainted with it. Just looking up in the site, I obviously remember the story of the house being burned down. I think it was like 20s. But you know, I'll have to look into it a little bit more. But as of right now, I'd say I'm very open to the idea. Any other council members?
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
You said we, and so I don't know who we are introducing the September 28th.
We, at this time being, would be me and Crystal Davis Dunn of the HRC.
So is the HRC introducing it, or it's two individuals?
We will be drawing up a resolution for the next HRC meeting to discuss this.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, Ed, that's more detail than I had about the history of that family. Similar to Mayor Stevens, I understood that there was a house that had been burned, and I don't remember who had been in that discussion, but we've had at least a casual conversation about some sort of historical marker in the childhood home of Malcolm X.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry to cut you off there. There's actually a few opportunities with East Lansing in terms of historical markers. There is a historical marker in Lansing at Malcolm's childhood home, his initial childhood home in Lansing, at 4705 MLK Boulevard. I think I got that address right. But also after they left that house, they moved to a house at 401 Charles Street. So right at the corner of Charles and Linden was once a house that was where the Littles were living for, I think, about 8 months. So there's an opportunity for a historical marker there. I think, this is, we've got until September, so we've got a lot of time. But yeah, just my priority for the time being is making sure that we had a lynching happen almost 90 years ago. And I do believe that our community had something to do with it at that time, given the political makeup of this area in the late 20s and early 30s. And so I just wanted to make sure that we didn't let this go 90 years unrecognized.
Yeah.
I'm totally on board with anything that we can do to kind of heal through acknowledgement. I think that the best way to move forward is to truly acknowledge our past and deal with the societal norms that enabled that past, and then use that as an example of how not to do going forward. So I'm totally on board with anything in that vein.
Okay. Thank you, Ed, for calling in. Any other council members? All right. Would you let in the next caller? Thank you, Ed.
Caller with the phone number ending in 660, you are now permitted to address council.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, good evening. It's me, Farhan. I want to thank you guys for answering my call. I had a quick question, Mr. Mayor, in regards to Najim's case that I asked you about in last meeting. What do you have for me about that?
To my knowledge, you had indicated that charges were dropped, and I don't believe that that is the case. I believe the charges are, or he was out on bail or on bond. Now, one point that you made last time, was that your only question?
For now, yeah.
Okay, so one point that you made that I thought was really, really well said last time that you came in and called was the idea of including pictures on a press release. And, on the state level right now, we've been working on an initiative to try and get rid of arrest records for folks that were either acquitted on charges or were never charged for the very, same reason and ideals that you pointed out, which were, innocent until proven guilty. Right. And,
Right.
The picture following somebody, I mean, you really do have that as, the court system hasn't ruled. And it's fairly accessible to see somebody's photo online if it's attached to a press release. And so, I had expressed that view to the city manager. I know that other council members did as well, and I was honestly going to bring it up in my comments today. But, I think that us setting a policy, I don't know whether that needs to be done in resolution form or whether that can just be verbal of saying that we shouldn't include pictures of individuals in those types of press releases unless absolutely necessary. And I mean for cases where there's a search or there's somebody missing, right? Situations where it would be necessary. I thought that point was really well taken because we do have a justice system that is innocent until proven guilty, and we need to make sure that we're not perpetuating that. So yeah, that was very well taken, and I agreed with that point. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah. Thank you. And again, feel free to just email me if you want to have a conversation. I'm more than happy to offline. I'm more than happy to answer questions here too. But all right. Emily, would you mind letting the next caller?
I believe that's all the callers on the line.
Okay, great. Our next item on the agenda is communications from the mayor and council members. I will start with my left, Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. I usually prefer to discuss East Lansing stuff and not personal stuff, but today I'm going to tell you a little story. My household shares two people with another household. The two households have some different views, including on wearing masks. That household, one of the adults, contracted COVID and proceeded to pass it to the other adult. Now, remind, they don't like wearing masks, and so we don't know exactly where it came from, but now both kids have COVID, so all four adults there. They managed to expose one 74-year-old family member by going shopping one afternoon. She is now in the clear and she's fine. They managed to expose two members of my household, one of whom has asthma and pre-existing conditions. And I managed to expose my mother, who is mercifully fine. Folks, masks matter, and masks over your nose matter. And it's a long, long chain to a nice 78-year-old lady you haven't met who could be very vulnerable. So I'm not in my best mood because I'm about to go have a cotton ball stuck up my nose because I haven't been able to get there for a few days. Little side note, I could stand in the Sahara Desert wearing a snowsuit and still not reach 98.6 degrees, but I have in the past 48 hours. So look, folks, I get it. You don't like them. Yes, I don't like them either. They fog up my glasses. I bump into things and I feel like a fool. But at the end of the chain is someone who never even saw it coming. And if you won't do it for you, do it for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Babcock. Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah. First, I want to give a shout out to East Lansing Public Schools, particularly to AD Nikki Norris and the rest of the crew up there for helping us finish our football season this week under some really challenging circumstances, under a protocol of rapid testing, tons of different logistical challenges, and just a multitude of things that had to take place to even successfully execute a game and allow our seniors, the coaching staff and other people to have an opportunity to finish the season. It was in a losing effort, but their effort was a champion's effort. And I just want to thank East Lansing School District for their support this season. It's been just a logistical nightmare, and they've been amazing in supporting us as a team. Secondly, just a friend of mine, talking with Councilperson Watson, just want to give a shout out to the staff of the city of East Lansing. If I didn't do it properly, closing out 2020, your efforts have been just, there should be books written about it. It's been an amazing effort, a heavy lift, just the insanity and the challenges and the things that you've done. I'll forever be in your debt for what you've done for the city. And you have my unfettered support for anything that's going on. And I understand the challenges of morale, and with everything that's going on and the economic challenges that are ahead of us. I just want to thank you guys for being so supportive. Just an amazing city. I've never had another city staff that I've worked with, but I consider this the best. And it's just been amazing to watch. You do so much with so little, and just make it work anyway. So thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. Fully agree. Councilmember Watson.
First, Councilmember Babcock, thank you for what you shared with us, and I wish you the best. I wish your family the best, speedy recoveries, and if I can drop off food, I'm definitely willing to. So, I wanted to take this moment to talk about the Deer Call. Some people have written in, and the Deer Call was something that I was not on city council for. And I was torn about the Deer Call coming back up again as an appointed city council person, because when city council at that time voted on the deer cull, I was feeling passionately enough that I actually wrote in as well, along with all the other people that wrote in and called in and stood in front of city council. And so some people have asked that we possibly reconsider the deer cull, but I thought about my presence here, and let's say we did. And I'm speaking of where I've spoken on where I stand, but my term expires this year. And there's a possibility that I might not be voted back with city council. And there's going to be a few other open seats. So it's like, do we go from agreeing to a deer cull? And then when we look at the history, there's been a lot of conversation about it. It didn't, just happen overnight. But do we reverse the cull now and then face that possibility that there's new people again who reverse it again? And just at that time, the people that the public did vote for those city council positions did vote, end up voting in favor of the deer cull. And it was not a unanimous thing, but I did want to ask and apologize, because last week when George talked about the cull, I thought I'd have the opportunity to ask questions, and I didn't. And I've seen the questions that are coming in, and people, I just want people to know that you're not alone in your concerns about it. And while for me, it's a loss that we are doing the deer cull, I also, as a city council person, want us to feel comfortable. And this is new for our city. It's something that some people know a lot about, but for our city, a lot of people don't. And so I wanted to ask if we could float around a FAQ, whether it's on our site or if it's on a Facebook post, addressing some of those common questions that people are asking, similar to some of the questions that I would have asked last week when we talked about the cull beginning. And oh, one more thing. Today's my son's birthday, so I just want to give a shout out to my son. He's double digits, so all my kids now are in their double digits.
Birthday.
Yes. So thank you. That's all I have. And I saw George's hand go up.
Yeah, George, go ahead.
Yeah, so we can put something out, some information. One of the problems with this, we've been discussing deer management for over 8 years now. So when we talk about things and then we finally get to it, it's so much time has expired. So we certainly can look at what information we can put back out regarding the deer management that's taking place and get that information out to people. Okay.
George, I have a couple of follow-up questions for you on that that don't necessarily need to be answered tonight, but if they could be answered at some point, that'd be great. Maybe just an email to council. So is this something that would have to be renewed by this council for the next year? And if so, I would want some information sent to this council and maybe even put out to the public. There was an idea floated last time, and I was on the council when that was voted, about doing a ballot initiative. And I was leaning towards that then. And if we're seeing a lot of back and forth now, and we have to vote on it again, I maybe want to explore that again. So
yeah, so I actually at that point thought that was a good idea, because I came up with the idea to put it on the ballot, because it's one of these really tough intractable problems. We know that we have more and more deer, and it is causing frustration and challenges for people. So it's not consequence free. We have about 45 or more car deer accidents per year. People we know of just recently had car deer accidents, unfortunately. So we also have our officers needing to put down deer that are injured after a car deer accident. So this is, not without consequence, leaving the deer population as is or expanding. So after all of the policy meetings we've had, all of the surveys, all of the public engagement sessions, all of the information sharing and policy changes we made, council obviously came to the tough decision to do a deer management, active deer management with USDA. Instead of doing a vote at that time, council felt they wanted to vote on it personally and not put it to the ballot. But I have to go back and look at that language that originally was passed by council, seeing if that called for a 1-year deer management program or if it called for a deer management program over time. And then with that will tell me if it's automatically coming back to council. But certainly, even if this is continuing, council can ask to look at this again and make a decision on it again in the future. So we certainly can bring back the information at the conclusion of this deer management cycle and have further discussion from a policy perspective. We can discuss if council wants to continue it, wants to consider putting it on a ballot in the future to hear from our residents. But obviously it's been a very much talked about issue, and I understand it's a difficult issue for a lot of people. And it's been something that we've worked on now. I think Kathy mentioned to me, it's been just over 8 years that we've been talking about deer management. So certainly been a long road to get here.
Well, go ahead, Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I like the ballot initiative portion of it, but I frankly feel like it's a ballot initiative that would pass. I'm more interested in the neighborhoods or places that are impacted based on some of the concerns and the emails. Just making sure we're fully transparent and just explaining the process. There's just a lot of either misinformation or lack of communication on what the process is going to look like, and that kind of thing, and which creates its own level of fear. We all know this. So just making a clear explanation, if it is what it is, if it's ugly, if it is what it is. I think there's been a little bit of attempt to make it seem more sanitary or however you want to put it. It just is what it is. But I think people will feel better with a good, fair assessment of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, why, and that they're going to be safe. And with whatever mechanisms that are going to be used, that's clear. They know the limitations of those mechanisms, so they feel safe in their homes and that kind of thing. I think that's only fair. So the ballot thing is limiting because I think it is a majority issue and most people will have no concern about it, but the actual affected neighborhoods might need a little bit more information, and particularly people in close proximity to the parks. So whatever that looks like, I think that's only fair for the people around there. That they had some legitimate concerns in the emails around that. I'd be concerned in my own neighborhood or home around sharpshooters or whatever, or how the deer are put down, or what the aftermath of that, or that whole thing. So I think that seemed to be more the concern than the actual yes or no. So that was it.
Would you, George, mind following up maybe with Councilmember Watson and Bacon on that issue specifically of communication, just to make sure that we...
Yep, I'll talk to staff and see what information we already have and can get information out to council and of course share it with the public as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely think there were some valid questions and concerns, and it's our job to answer them. So
thank you very much, George.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Watson, please.
Just two more things around the poll. I don't think majority should rule in whether or not deers are killed. And I wonder also if a ballot initiative can include a middle option of how to reduce the population. And so again, just some people feel very strongly about not killing the deer. And so asking majority of the community and voting on that, because most people agreed to kill the deer, doesn't mean that it's okay to kill the deer, in my humble opinion.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
No, I think that's 100% fair, and of course the ballot initiative was just an idea proposed. So I definitely think that can be a conversation in the future. Continue if you had. I thought you said you had one more thing.
Oh no, it was just those two things.
Okay, great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Mayor Pro Tem.
Hi. I've got a few kind of PR things I just wanted to make sure touched on. We've already commented once about the crowdfunding campaign that's up right now through Patronicity. You can find a link through that on the city's website. I believe it was also posted through the city's Facebook page. There's a lot of supporting detail attached to the proposal. So if you're interested in it, go and check it out. But it's really kind of an idea of activating our outdoor spaces downtown and kind of creating an atmosphere that people want to linger in, with an eye towards really helping out our business, kind of helping people feel comfortable downtown, stay longer downtown, and then obviously, hopefully shop downtown. So it's a really good opportunity. If we meet our fundraising goal, which is not insubstantial, there's a $50,000 fundraising goal. I believe we're at about 18,000 right now, last I checked. So we still have a ways to go, but we only started like 4 days ago. So actually we're doing pretty good. If we meet that goal, it's a 1-for-1 match from the MEDC. So it's $50,000 coming to the community to match our community's donation. So I would strongly encourage you guys to go check that out. If you are interested in supporting our downtown, please consider donating to that. It would be very much appreciated. We also are starting, part of that daytime, nighttime, anytime campaign is starting a winter market. And that's going to be starting up mid-February. So that's a ways out. But if you are a craftsperson or a grower in our community and you're interested in vending at that market, there's an application on the city's website. Just look for the winter market and the application is very clearly right there. So that's an opportunity. It's not exactly an indoor space. It's in a subterranean level of one of the parking garages. So it is somewhat sheltered from the elements. It is not fully climate controlled, but it is extremely well ventilated. Everyone obviously will be masked and distanced and rules will be upheld. But it's a fairly safe opportunity and it's local. So if you are a craftsperson that has been without selling opportunities, this might be good. On a slightly less upbeat note, we got word today that indoor dining has been pushed back to February 1st. So that's a fairly devastating blow to our restaurant community. And I would just encourage everyone to keep patronizing those businesses as much as you can. They've got bills to pay, even if the staff has been laid off. Obviously that's devastating for the staff, but it's not enough to cut the business overheads down to the point where they can really survive. So they've got 2 more weeks of extremely limited service capabilities. I have personally been enjoying many takeout lunches that I would not fiscally ordinarily allow myself, but you know, it's my duty. So I'll suffer through it and I'm actually quite enjoying it. But yes, so please continue to do what you can for our restaurants as they hopefully get to that February 1st date, and hopefully we'll have better news then for them. I had, kind of side note, I had a really fun opportunity yesterday to talk to a local Cub Scout pack about public service, and it kind of reminded me of some of the reasons that I signed up for this gig, which has obviously been very different this year than I was anticipating. I think it's always going to be different from the inside than it is from the outside, but it has been exceptionally difficult due to COVID. And obviously that's not something we were anticipating. One of the scouts asked me what my favorite thing was about city council. And it made me realize that actually the part that is my favorite and the part that I most miss is talking to people. I used to have a chance to do my office hours. Aaron Stevens and I did a Facebook Live, but it's not really the same. I've been responding to some email coming in by just picking up the phone and calling people. So put your contact information on your email. And also if you want to just call me, my phone number is 517-643-3963, which is also located on the council page. So if I can't pick up, I won't pick up. So you're not bothering me by calling me. Leave a message and I'll call you back. And I would love to talk to more of our citizens more often. So.
Thank you,
That's it.
Jesse.
Yep.
Just as a small point, it was pointed out to me at a council neighborhood president's, either by Alice or by another member of that group. When you're ordering takeout, if you're doing takeout specifically, you should try to order directly from the restaurant. If you use one of the apps or an online platform, they might take a portion. of that money, which, I know that folks obviously have jobs there too, and everybody's going through a rough time. So I don't mean to sound insensitive towards that, but, supporting the local business directly in that way is important as well. And obviously those businesses being on those apps and those different websites is really just them trying to get more publicity for their business. So try to order directly as well. And I've been making sure to consciously remind myself of that whenever I'm ordering takeout. Okay. So I have a few things. One was talked about a little bit earlier, or I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to kind of make the statement here. I don't necessarily know if we need a policy for this, but I do think it's something that we should do going forward that is good. I would like to see only pictures on police press releases regarding the arrest of an individual, or only pictures there in regards to police press releases if it's absolutely necessary. I pointed out the reasons why before. I don't necessarily have to rehash it now, but I do think in our effort to make sure that folks are really treated as innocent until proven guilty, I think that's a good way to go about things. So if we can just do that, that's great. If we need a policy, I'm okay with that too. So
we can implement that directly, and that is an easy change to make.
Great.
In the situations where we're like be on the lookout for that type of thing, we would do the picture. But if it's something where it's just informational, we'll just rely on the media. If they want to see it, they can request that directly rather than us sending it out.
Yeah, I think that's a good first step, and maybe we even have a further conversation about media requests on that. But I do think that's a good first step, just because it is. It's our effort on the state level now too, and I don't want to be perpetuating it. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is something in regards to probably an amendment I'm going to make to the consent agenda a little bit later. I made a mistake, and I want to own up to that. I had originally believed that there were 2 vacancies on the study committee through my own fault, and the bottom line does come with me on that issue, and so there is only 1 vacant spot on that commission. The urgency of appointing somebody was pointed out to me by the chair, Chuck Grigsby, because they have continued their work and they would like to have a full commission to continue that effort and hopefully select somebody that would hit the ground running. And so I will be taking one of the names off that list. If other council members do not like that plan going forward, I'm more than happy to entertain deferral motion, anything like that. I will be voting in favor of taking one name off and voting in favor of the appointment of the other individual. However, this is a council decision, so I did just want to make that note that I did make that mistake. I apologize to both individuals, and I just apologize. So next thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'm hoping that Elaine will talk about this during our MLK presentation, but I just want to give a big note to the virtual event that's going to be happening very, very soon. And actually, I'm just going to ask that Elaine talk about that in detail at our later business agenda item, because she can speak to it better than I can. We're going into budget season this meeting. You will see some interesting slides on this agenda that you haven't maybe seen in the past, or maybe last year we had some similar on priority-based budgeting. I think this is a really cool model, and we've been talking about it for a few years, just to make a really long document a little bit more accessible. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of questions. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to bring out and maybe change or not change, and there's going to be questions from the community. But I do think that really trying to show the community what is a multi-million-dollar budget with a lot of different aspects to it is difficult. And I think that this is one way to maybe make it a little bit more accessible to folks. So I think this is really cool. I'm excited to get into this budget season. This is a very pivotal year, both for the city of East Lansing, also for many, many cities. And we're going to be having some tough conversations and also some good conversations because of the work that's already been done in terms of cost mitigation and making sure that we would be okay this year and going forward. So to Ron's point, thank you for the folks that are continuing to do the work to make sure that we're in a decent and good position this year, even if we are going to have to make some tough decisions. So thanks again. I'm excited to get into this tonight. Obviously, no decisions are going to be made tonight. We're just doing an intro and a little bit of an introduction on timeline. But for the newer council members here, this is our kickoff. and welcome to the most fun part of being on City Council. That's what I got. I believe the next item on our agenda is City Manager's Report. Mr. Lahanas.
Mayor. Just a quick thank you to Councilmember Bacon for the kind remarks. I certainly will pass that along to staff. There have been a lot of staff working hard, and certainly they'll appreciate your remarks. Also, I don't have any remarks at this point. This was supposed to be a discussion-only meeting. We had to add a couple of action items, and the city attorney did not attend tonight as well, so he will not be here for comments. Just wanted to point that out because it was supposed to be a discussion-only meeting.
Great.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize. I wanted to make one other note, and this is a little bit more off the record, but sorry, not off the record, a little bit off what I was speaking on before. I learn about something in East Lansing that somebody is doing for people in need every single day, whether it's via a phone call or it's, even one of our previous callers calling in about the stories that they're doing on local businesses to try and promote them. I just talked to a good friend of mine who happens to be a pastor in the area about how they're supporting a refugee family by paying the rent. I'm going to try and figure out some more ways that I can support folks directly. I am 24 and I don't know if many folks know this. I don't get paid much for this job, but I will try my best to make sure that I'm doing my part as well. And obviously this budget season is going to be an interesting conversation around that as well. But I just want to say every day I learn something about another East Lansing resident or another East Lansing organization that's doing the most to help people in need during a really difficult time. And I'm very thankful for this community. And I don't think many communities would be doing as much as we are. So thank you to everybody that continues to help those in need. That's what I got. All right. And our city attorney is not here. So our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Mr. Lahanas, would you mind reading that off?
1 second. I just lost my my webpage.
Are you comfortable with me reading it off?
I don't want to lose my very important position here of reading the consent agenda, but sure, if you want to.
Go ahead. You can find it.
I do enjoy it very much. We have the consent agenda of the following items for council consideration. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments and reappointments to boards or commissions. A, Kathy Boyle to the Study Committee on an Independent Police Oversight Commission. B, Ed Rushton to the Study Committee on an Independent Police Oversight Commission. And C, Julian Van Dyke to the Art Selection Panel for a partial term ending December 31st, 2022. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council consideration.
All right. I will move approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Do we have to edit the one item that you needed to edit before we
I'll be making an amendment.
All right.
Second.
All right, seconded by Councilmember Babcock. And then I have one amendment. I will make a motion to amend item 3.1 to strike B from the agenda and re-letter the items to read Kathy Boyle. A, Kathy Boyle to the Study Committee on an Independent Police Oversight Commission, and B, Julian Van Dyke to the Art Selection Panel for a partial term ending December 31st, 2022. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Bacon. Any
Am I
discussion?
allowed to give any commentary on
Yeah,
that,
go
Aaron,
ahead.
or would that be after?
Yeah, that's
I
right.
just want to thank both individuals for being available for this, and we apologize for discrepancy in the number count between our notes in that process, and both these individuals were extremely qualified and able to contribute. Due to the time-bound nature and the rules set in place, we had to narrow it down to one individual. I just want to thank both individuals for presenting and offering to volunteer and help us get through this really difficult and laborious process of developing the Police Oversight Commission. So thank them. I want to thank both individuals.
Great. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
I was excited to see both names coming to the study committee. I sat beside Kathy when I was on Planning Commission, and Ed, I don't think I've ever met in person, but I recognized the name, and I know that he's called in, and I know that he's done a lot of advocacy. And so I was disappointed about the mistake, But I also, I am in support of Kathy Boyle being on the study committee. But I also want to say I have vacancies on my commissions, but also just in general, we do have vacancies on commissions. And Ed, if you would like to reconsider any other commissions, I'm liaison for the Housing Commission as well as the University Student Commission. I'm a co-liaison. I don't think they're meeting right now, but I'm just throwing out that we do have vacancies. And if you'd please reconsider being a part of our city in other ways, I'd love to see your name again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just want to second what Councilmember Watson said about vacancies. Even if the commission that you're interested in, and this is to Ed and to everyone honestly listening, all three people who have tuned into this council meeting, our YouTube numbers are terrible, you guys. We need to be more entertaining. Even if the commission that you're interested in is full, please submit an application anyway. Having applications on file makes it much easier for us to fill those vacancies. We don't really like to go forward with empty seats on those commissions because it messes up our quorum numbers. It's not great. So don't let the lack of available seats stop you. If you've got any interest in any city commission, please put in an application. We have a lot of, people move, people get new jobs. There's all sorts of reasons why vacancies open up midterm. So please don't let that stop you.
Good. Yes, thank you. And again, I apologize for the previous mistake. I did that directly to both individuals and to Chuck, the chair, but just want to apologize one more time. So moving forward, is there any discussion? Oh, sorry. Did we vote on the amendment? I don't believe we did.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right. Now on to the main motion as amended. Any discussion on that? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And Councilmember Watson, I believe that was a vote in the affirmative, correct?
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed, same sign. Great. All right, that passes. Next item on the agenda is our business agenda. Approval of a resolution to pay tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy of nonviolent social change, principled leadership, and public service. Ms. Lane Hardy, thank you for being with us.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I am here before you as a representative of the Dr. Martin Luther King Commission of Mid-Michigan. I'm excited to inform you about our upcoming annual day of celebration, which will be held Monday, January 18th at 7:00 p.m. on Channel 10 WILX. And for those of you who don't use WILX as a television station, it will also be available during that same time on YouTube. If you visit the mlkmidmichigan.com, it'll also give you information about how you can view the event on other platforms as well. We are excited about this program. I mean, annually we have been blessed to have a wide swath of our Mid-Michigan community come together at the Lansing Center to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. King. I think last year we had upwards of 2,200 people for lunch. This year we have an opportunity to host about 22,000 people on this particular platform. So please watch us. And I am excited also to announce that Dr. Bernice King, the daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King, will featured speaker. I had a wonderful opportunity to spend about an hour and a half with her, and she has brought some wonderful insight about the new civil rights movement and her role as a bridge between the two movements. So please tune in so that you don't miss her. And the second item that I have before you, Mayor and Council, is a resolution.
Hold on, Elaine, before you get into the resolution,
yes,
can I just point out to the community and to everybody, maybe it's 3 people, maybe it's more, but just how incredible the MLK Mid-Michigan Commission of a job they do. And this is the premier event in this country for honoring the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And the reason why we feature such incredible speakers, people with things to teach us that we wouldn't know unless we heard it from them, attend, is because of the work that this commission continues to do. And we have two members of our council here or two members of this meeting that are very, very familiar with the work. And I just need to thank them and everybody on the commission because, I wasn't worried about this event not happening when everything, transpired the way that it was, because I knew that they would find a way to honor this legacy because they do it best. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And you can continue, but I didn't want to go unnoticed
Thank
with
you.
that.
I think that Councilmember Babcock, did you have a comment? I just thought I saw your hand up.
Just a very brief one. Every time the Regional MLK Commission is mentioned, one name always bubbles to the top. And I think she knows that I am one of her biggest fans. But for anyone who hasn't discussed it with others in the community, you may not appreciate how much the core of that group is East Lansing's own Elaine Hardy. So thank you.
Thank you. I have to say this, our work as a community, as a city organization, really undergirded the commission for several years. And I have been proud to serve as the city's liaison on the MLK Commission. It's a group of amazing volunteers who are really dedicated to promoting the legacy of Dr. King. And it is so much needed in our community. I mean, there's things that have laid bare this year, particularly the need for commissions such as this. But I have to tell you that it was East Lansing's commitment to that work that kept this commission going in some very, very difficult financial times. And so it was this commission, it was our city manager, our city leadership. And so it's not just me, the kudos, it really belongs to our city. And so I'm extraordinarily proud of the work that we do and the events that we do throughout the year to recognize the work of Dr. King, but particularly our signature event. So don't forget to tune in on Monday, January 18th, 7:00 p.m. Listen, we're preempting Jeopardy. So you have got to watch. There's going to be amazing entertainment. And as I said, the conversation with Dr. Bernice King is really just phenomenal, just phenomenal. So thank you. So Mayor and members of council, you have before you a resolution paying tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And acknowledging the observance of the National Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. And I am really just looking for a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion to approve the resolution.
That is a motion by Councilmember Bacon. Is there a second?
I will proudly second.
Seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Any discussion or amendments?
Yeah, I'm going to double down again, and just to reiterate Councilperson Babcock's comments before. Elaine, as well as other staff members over the years, have been part of the commission for many years now, MLK Commission, and it's just tireless hours and time and additional work, effort, and support that's been put into our commission to support us, and particularly when we get down to crunch time at the end of the process. Many late nights, and for people staying after and doing things for us and supporting us from the city of East Lansing. It wouldn't even be possible without their support over the years. It really wouldn't have happened. Particularly, I feel at times like Elaine Hardy was on loan to us from East Lansing to be able to do this massive lift year after year. It's just incredible. If you saw the amount of people that generate this amount of output, you'd be really impressed. And I think that once again, I want to give another compliment to the city staff who supported us year over year.
And we should mention Michael Fry and Archie from our communications team for the work that they do to support the commission as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that. I'm proud to vote yes on this resolution, and I won't belabor that point. Thank you very much for bringing it to us. Any more discussion?
I just wanted to say I'm going to be voting yes on the resolution. And I always appreciate these resolutions and that they're coming out of the city of East Lansing. When I have my discussions with the schools, I bring up this resolution. I would bring up this resolution. I've brought up our other resolution as an educational opportunity, as a historical opportunity, from knowing about our city, knowing about what we value, how government works, and also just I appreciate all the work that goes into these whereases, and I think they should be memorized and hung up. So thank you for your work, and thank you, everybody.
We're just an incredibly lucky city for the work that that the Mid-Michigan Commission does. This resolution, for many reasons, I'm supportive, but it was Andrew, and I can't remember his last name for the life of me. But last year, yeah, and just having conversations, being in East Lansing, having the ability to have a conversation with somebody that literally wrote the book on Congressman John Lewis. And was one of his close confidants, learning a little bit more, gaining perspective that we just couldn't gain from anybody else. We're just a lucky community. So don't pass up the opportunity to receive some of that knowledge next Monday. Please tune in. All right. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right. That passes unanimously. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a priority-based budgeting presentation and discussion.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Council. So as the mayor mentioned, this is really the kickoff to our budget process, and we're really pleased to do it. And also sort of introduce or reintroduce for some of you the priority-based budgeting open PBB portal. So a number of things we're going to do tonight is give an overview of priority-based budgeting, going through the portal and showing you the actual tool. It's going to be reviewing our department operations and programs with you, and then reviewing our budget next steps, sort of what steps we're doing with council as we go forward. We are starting the budget process earlier this time, and obviously with the introduction of priority-based budgeting, we think it presents great opportunity for more engagement and more time spent. So we're moving a little bit earlier now, probably about 3 weeks or a month earlier than before. And I think that's a good thing because it gives you more time to digest all of the information we're giving. So, and then of course, an opportunity for more questions and more discussion. So we have something I'd prefer to do in person, which is presentations from a lot of different department heads. But we're going to do our best to sort of share screens and switch between people. We've done a dry run of this and it worked out pretty well. So hopefully this translates well. And of course, this is really also your time to hear about the budget and learn more about the city operation in terms of priority-based budgeting and expenses and operation. So feel free to ask those questions. If we want more follow-up conversation on any specific areas in the coming weeks, certainly we can do that as well. So we don't have to do it all tonight, and trying to be respectful of your time as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Nicole to pull up the presentation. So do I have to do anything here? No, there you go. Okay, great. So priority-based budgeting, the underlying philosophy of PBB is about how governments invest resources and how we achieve objectives. Objectives are really the same thing as results. That's the outcomes that you're looking for. And we're going to be talking about the results or objectives, and that's those tabs: economy, environmental, infrastructure, recreation, safety, and good governance. Those are our results or outcomes. So we'll be talking about that throughout the process here. So what is PBB? PBB is a budget and communication tool. It's a new way of looking at the budget based on programs. And it talks about the prioritization of programs. What are our priorities as a community and organization? And what are the priorities certainly from council? Why PBB? It links funding decisions to priorities. It identifies existing programs and services. It helps identify the actual cost for services, and you're going to get to see more information about that. And it also helps us to identify potential efficiencies, which is very useful in tough budget times, but in all budget times, to make sure that we've got the resources to do the things you want us to do. So with that, PBB states information differently. It's not the same as a budget. PBB states things differently than a budget. So you could take that whole 200-page binder, and this is going to look quite a bit different. Budgets show their information on a fund basis. A fund is an accounting method that separates records for purposes of carrying on one specific activity. So everything's on a fund basis in a budget. PBB changes that and breaks everything into programs. So everything we do is a program. What is a program? It's a service or it's an activity. So the advantage again of this is to show the true cost of what that service costs, but also to see how it aligns with your priorities. So when this is the second year of implementing priority-based budgeting for us, this is a major change of how we organize our information. So I would say that the information gets better over time and we're getting better at this. So what I mean by that is when you're dividing your activities into programs, you might have divided something too far or not quite far enough, and then decide the second year, that didn't make sense. I can do this better next time as a director and showing the true cost or the true service. So there's things you could change or prioritize differently. And because of that, I think that the data after the first year has gotten a little bit better the second year. And also, I mean, the data is good data for what it is. It's just something that in our second year, this is an improving process for us, but it has lots of great information for us. With that, can we switch to the next slide, please? So as I mentioned, across the top, we have results. And the results are established as basically our strategic priorities and come from council over time. These are the large category areas that we work towards in terms of our organization. As this is not interactive, this is just a slide. But when you pull up the PBB portal, you're going to be able to click on these slides, on these tabs: economy, environment, infrastructure, recreation, safety, and good governance. And when you do, the terms below it, those definitions all relate to that specific slot, that specific heading. So keep in mind, as you click through these tabs, you will see definitions down below that are different and unique to that specific result. Also, we talk about prioritizing programs. Just because something does not come up as the highest priority doesn't mean it's not an important program that we're not going to continue doing it. That's not what it means. It means that what is the alignment that we have with overall with your priorities? If something is less aligned, it still may be a program that we intend to do for the entire history of East Lansing and into the future. So keep that in mind. It doesn't mean that something is a lower priority or not as aligned that we're going to stop doing it. Next slide, please. So in addition to our results, we also look at programs in terms of what is called our program attributes or basic program attributes. These are not developed by us. These are developed by ResourceX in terms of being able to score a program or look at a program in terms of its impact. It's the number of people it impacts and so on. These tabs also exist in the slides, also exist on the website. And when you click on them, you can also see definitions unique to those program attributes. But I'll go through them really quickly for you. Mandate is something a state or federal mandate. Is it a mandate that we put on ourselves, council puts on itself through an ordinance that it requires? Or is there no mandate at all to do something? Reliance. So where can you get the service from? Is the city the sole provider, or are there other providers who could provide a service for our residents in lieu of coming to us for service? Is there cost recovery? Yes or no? It doesn't mean there's full cost recovery, but is there at least partial cost recovery? Now, demand. Is demand for a service increasing, remaining the same, or decreasing? What is the population served? Is it serve majority of our population? Does it serve less than 50%? Does it serve less than 10%? And then overall is a tab that looks at all of the alignment with the basic program attributes and those priorities set by council. So these are just ways of essentially scoring and then looking at programs to see if they align with our results that we want to accomplish. So with that, can we go to the next slide, please? So PBB is a decision-making tool, and that's really where the power of this comes from. The quartiles you see on the side really relate to agreement with your priorities. So quartile 1 is supposed to have the closest agreement or the closest alignment with what council says is our priorities. That means it furthers the issues of good governance, of environment, of infrastructure, and so on. Quartile 4 means it has the least alignment, and so on. So right away, when you look at this, you say to yourselves, what is the city of East Lansing? Where are we allocating our money? And right away, you get some information that the vast majority of the largest portion of our resources are going into the higher quartiles, which is good news. Quartile 4 has by far the lowest resources, which is also good news. if you had done this process that we did last year, and this was reversed, most of our money was going into the lower quartiles and not into the first quartile, you would say that we are not spending our money in a way that's aligned with the direction that we should be heading as a city in terms of council setting priorities. So that's really what this shows. How did it work out that the costs are so aligned? I think a lot of this has been careful and good management by council, by staff over many years. We've come through some really tough financial times. And because of that, I think we've thinned out the things that we don't need to do, and we focused on the things that we're supposed to be doing. So that's probably what we see here in terms of quartiles. And then not prioritized, you're going to see some boxes that are not prioritized because they simply don't lend themselves. They're things we just have to do, kind of givens, if you will. And I'll show that in a minute. So PBB can also, in terms of decision making, it can help you find opportunities for efficiencies and growth. Are there things you want to do less of in the lower quartiles to free up resources to do things in the higher quartiles that you want to be able to focus on programs? We can switch to the next slide. So how does this work? The city is like a full toolbox. So once we allocate for PBB, everything we do, every person and all of our resources are allocated into a program. So that means every staff time, every computer, ideally, every dollar we spend goes into a program, and everything has to be allocated 100%. So my time is allocated 100% to various programs. And what we mean by that you can't allocate 90% or 110% is if we were to say we want to implement a different program in the planning department, all of their time is currently allocated on various programs. If we want to do a new program, we have to have the decision-making process of what do we want to do less of, what do we not want to do, what do we want to do differently, because people can only be allocated 100% of their time, obviously. So in some sense, it gives you a management tool to make sure that you're prioritizing properly. It's not just the notion that we can do, we can keep doing more, because we obviously know in those situations, there are things that fall by the wayside, and this reflects that. So I think that makes it a very useful tool. You can't overflow any of the programs or overfill any of the programs. With that, go to the next slide. So this is what the portal looks like at a glance. And we're going to get into this more and have our discussion from this. This is called the tree plot. And it's called the tree plot because it lays everything out graphically for you. And I think this is actually one of the most unique and useful portions of PBB. In some way, this is breaking down the budget right here in a graphical sense, and it's showing you a lot of information regarding the overall operation of the city. Let's switch to the next slide. So the size of boxes show the relative cost of a program, which is great because obviously tiny boxes, less intensive program, less resources in the program. The larger the box, the bigger the program. So now all of a sudden you can look at this relatively and see what the size of the operations are and what are the most resource intensive programs and what are the least. Let's go to the next slide. So overall, this entire tree plot represents about $77 million of resources. And we know that the budget is somewhere around $108, $109 million. If you take out, that's not the number at the end of the budget because we take out interfund transfers. So let's just say the full budget of the city is $108.7 million. This represents about $77 million because it doesn't include capital and it doesn't include debt. And the reason you don't have capital and debt in there is because that really can skew the numbers from year to year. If you do a big project in the WRF like we know we do, that could dramatically change the size of a box for public works, and then it shrinks back down when the project is done. So that's why the logic of taking out the capital. There is a very minor amount of capital in here in terms of computer rental, computer replacement, and also vehicle replacement. But largely speaking, generally capital is not included in here. With that, let's go to the next slide. And also the color of the boxes tell you information about a program as well. It tells you for a selected program, how closely it aligns with your identified results. The darker the color, the greater the alignment. So the higher the priority program, quartile 1, versus the lighter color, the faint color means it has less priority with the results. So again, the more intense color, the closer the alignment. And then the legacy costs and council, as I mentioned, there were a couple of things that were not scored. Legacy costs in city council are not scored. They're considered fixed costs for us. Legacy costs aren't really a program. We have to make the payments. So we don't decide really whether we would do it or not. It's simply there. And of course, the city council is established by charter as the leadership of the city, and it's a fixed cost for us. So those aren't scored. Every other program is scored. And with that, let's switch to the next slide. So this is the last slide, and then we jump into the actual portal. If you want to click around on this a bit, which I recommend you do, there's a tutorial. If you go to that little .I and click on that, it'll give you a tutorial and walk you through it. And now I'm going to do a screen share, and we're going to switch into the presentation. This is kind of the overview portion. Now we're switching into the actual presentation on the departments and using the Open PBB portal. So with that, I switch to screen sharing. Let me do that quickly here. Screen share.
And I apologize, are you going to be presenting on the proposed budget or the previous budget via PBB?
This is presenting on 2021, the current year, in terms of where our resources are going.
Okay, so, and this will be kind of the comparison to the proposed.
We're presenting on what is right now for this year.
Gotcha.
And as we move into the budget process, we're going to be going through what is next year going to look like. So this is kind of the starting point for our budget. And of course, we know for the general situation is last year's budget is usually a good guidepost for how next year's budget looks. So
right.
That's what we're going. That's the numbers we're going over now.
Thank you.
And significantly, this does not have the changes from COVID in it. This is the original budget from 2021. So can everyone see my screen now? Yes. Okay. So you'll see that this is the ResourceX PBB page. And if you click on Open PBB, that takes you to the Open PBB portal. I hope. Well, there it is. Okay. So now we get to see the results that we talked about: economy, environmental, infrastructure, and so on. We go to results, program attributes, and this brings up the basic program attributes. We click on the overall, and we click on tree plot. What I'm doing here is getting you to a good general look at the tree plot that shows you all of the basic program attributes and the results prioritized together, essentially. So it kind of combines everything into one. And again, the intensity of the color shows that alignment. There's lots of different ways you can look at this. You can go back to the results and click on all the tabs and see how our results align with those in specific programs. So let me shrink this just a little bit. So now we're looking at the live portal of the entire city. And again, what we can see here, and why I think this is such a great tool, is you can see for the $77 million that we're spending, what portion we're spending on what department, just in terms of relative size. You can see a lot here that the Department of Public Works is pretty far and away the largest department that we have. Why? Lots of big operations, right? There's utilities, there's streets, there's lots of people-intensive operations, there's lots of energy usage, there's lots of commodity with the purchase of water, lots of things like that being done in public works. And obviously police, planning, fire, and so on. Legacy costs, we can see in terms of legacy costs, the portion of the operation that consumes at this point. I'm going to focus on a couple of areas directly, and that's going to be executive, and it's going to be administrative services. I will go into administrative services. So you can click into each operation, and then you can click further into each program. So I'm going to start with executive and pull that up. And we can see here, executive includes 3 different areas. It includes legal counsel, our city attorney and city legal representation, city manager's office, and the mayor and council. Now, within this area, basically everything we do, all of the resources of people and stuff, materials, service contracts, computers, all of that, utility usage is all put into these programs to show the cost of the program. You can see that the city manager's office, myself, and Nicole, when we were putting this together, we've since added Elaine Hardy, and I'll talk about where that shows up. We can click into it and see city manager's operation. My largest box, operations and oversight management. This is where myself and Nicole spend our time in meetings with staff, individual staff meetings, group meetings, all of the one-on-one department head meetings, all the things I do in the operation and management of the city So a significant portion of my time. If you click into this further, you actually get personnel costs and non-personnel costs for that specific operation, including operating costs. It talks about what other things go into it in terms of computer rental, employee training, all the things that go into that specific program of management and oversight. So again, we can see priority-based budgeting is here. This looks like a very large program. That's because this is a contract for this service. And it's also time from all the other departments where people spend time in priority-based budgeting being billed back essentially to this program or showing up in this home program for priority-based budgeting. Communications with council, DEI oversight. This is an area where we budgeted last year at the original time to do $30,000 for a contract for training citywide. After the budget was adopted, we went obviously with a much bigger initiative, hiring Elaine Hardy as DEI administrator and also doing a larger contract through Truth and Titus. So this box will be expanding dramatically next year because of the allocation of resources and thereby showing the increasing priority of DEI oversight and administration. Goal setting and so on, all is a part of that. The best way to go back on this chart is to click on the breadcrumbs, not use the back arrow because that takes you way out. Go back to executive. Again, we see mayor and council, policy creation, agenda management. This is going to be council's time. It's also going to be staff time with your council secretary and other staff who assist in that process in terms of programs. And then legal and executive, obviously, is our city attorney contract, and it's going to be the contracts for fees for our attorneys used for various processes, general legal, legal defense, and legal prosecution. With that, I will jump back out to another area, administrative services. Administrative services is information systems, city clerk, human resources, and communications. So these are 4 administrative areas where just basically a lot of the administration of the city, except for finance, is done. We have here IT, obviously a pretty large in terms of cost, 3 staff people. This primarily, the cost here primarily is, in addition to the 3 staff, is contracts. It is license agreements for software. It is network infrastructure cost. It is service agreements. That is the type of thing here where we see all the cost in the IT and information systems in all the various ways. City clerk and elections is, I believe, 4 FTE, 3 full-time and 2 part-time. You can just see from the boxes here, city clerk elections, that elections administration is by far their largest cost because of the amount of the regular staff that are taking time in it, but also the amount of contingent staff or election inspectors we hire is obviously very people intensive. So a majority of what they do is in elections. License administration, so the business licensing program that they run. Records request, this is going to be FOIA requests that they process, but it's also can be FOIA information from other departments, not including police and fire, to get that information back to the clerk's office, and so on and so forth in that department. Human resources, we see the typical functions of human resources. Big one is benefits administration and employee relations. Employee relations is our union relations. It's grievance handling. It's working with department heads if there's issues related to administering the labor agreement. This is employee development and training, and then review and, sorry, I lost that. Reviewing and entering personnel transactions. So this is basically the management of the human resource information system in this box here, the amount of time and effort spent in that. And then hiring and application process and tracking. This is the part that's done by HR in terms of hiring processes, federal law compliance, workers' comp, and so on. So with that, finally, communications. Communications, as we mentioned, is very ably led by Michael Fry. We have 2.5 FTE in communications. When you look at these boxes here, you see, I'll click on it to pull it up. Cable services is really the largest component, but it's a contract. So this is a contract with video professionals for the televising of council meetings and for the planning commission meetings. If you click in here, you can see that most of it is non-personnel, again, because it's a contract. You go into operating costs, and again, you see contract services makes up the largest portion by far of that. And that just gives you an example of what that expense costs. Obviously, what staff works on, media relations and press releases, e-newsletters, print publications, website content management, social media, graphic design. So that's what our communications staff are working on a regular basis to get all the information out to the community. So with that, I'll use the breadcrumbs again. And that is just a real general look at our administrative services. So with that, I will go back out to overall and then ask if council had any questions about these specific areas. And of course, if I can't answer it, we have the managers and directors available if there are more specific questions. Certainly you can ask questions at the end as well. So no need to, if you prefer to jot those down, if you have any questions now. If not, I'll move on to the next component.
Go ahead, Councilmember Bacon.
Just to understand, George, the kind of the integrity of the data with this being such a unique year and probably going to be kind of a Q1 to Q2 versus Q3, Q4, a lot of difference in where allocation or budget pressure might come from. Is there any concern with the data?
Yeah, you know, it's really going to be a matter of when we get to the end of the year, what do the budget amendments look like? So what are the size of the budget amendments? That's still a work in progress. So, you know, obviously we're doing a lot of things to control costs. So there will be some changes in this, but this really is a good picture of the current operations of the city. There's going to be some things on the fringes that are going to change, but this gives you a good sense of where the resources are allocated for budgeting purposes for next year.
Thank you.
So, follow-up question. So give us a little bit of a sense into the timeline of when this kind of data gets compiled versus how the budget process goes through. So this obviously was the data for the budget that was passed this past year, but you know, when will this be available to the public for this current budget cycle?
After you approve a budget, we take that document, we give it to Resource X, and they dump it into this system. And then we have to go through and make sure that we've prioritized properly and clean up the data. So I would guess by summer, basically at the start of the fiscal year, we should have the data. We were delayed this time because of COVID, so it was a little bit late getting the data in and up. But this really is a dump of our budget data into the system and then just making sure that it's all in good shape before making it live. So after you approve a budget, this will be updated.
And then, you know, updates to that, let's say updates to this previous budget in 2021, because obviously there were changes. Do you know, like, that would be made at the same time?
We're generally not going to go through and do budget amendments to this because, I mean, it's a year. I mean, kind of like that, the budget was the document that you approved, and this reflects that in terms of the spending of the programs at that point in time. So it's a snapshot at a point in time. And then when we're moving to the next year, it will be updated. Like I said, with DEI, this shows a snapshot in time when we were spending $30,000. Now this next year, when we put a new dump in, it's going to be a full-time staff person plus the Truth and Titus contract plus staff training time. So that box is going to get quite a bit bigger. So it's going to reflect the new situation for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions and of course, if you have questions later at the end, we can ask them then. So you don't have to have everything right now, obviously. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Jill and I will stop sharing my screen. Okay.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Jill.
I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so I'm going to go into the financial services section. And once you're inside of financial services, you can see finance, you can see treasury, income tax, and assessing. Now I'm going to pause real quick because I think financial services is a little bit unique in that, you know, George had mentioned that this was meant to be a program or an activity. And so with the city being decentralized for budgeting, for accounts payable, for payroll, a lot of different departments are funneling into this financial services section, especially in those areas. So I'll show that to you in a minute here, but I just want you to keep that in mind. You know, every department plays a role in the finances of the city. So this isn't just the finance department. This really does bring in everybody from the city. All right, so I'm going to jump into finance. And as you can see, we have 4 main programs. The first one being budget development, approval, and monitoring. This one is primarily personnel costs, as you can see in that little box above it. And this would be all departments. And this would be our time preparing the budget, monitoring the budget, doing the forecast, all of those things. So it is a very large program of the finance department. I'm going to jump down here to the audit. This is the audit and the CAFR preparation. So the CAFR is the report that is presented to you after the audit is complete. So you guys just saw that in December. So here it's partially personnel and partially non-personnel. So the non-personnel side is really the audit itself with Plant Moran. And then the preparation of it, getting ready for the audit and also working with the auditors and working on the report. That would be the personnel costs. Then we have accounts payable. This is how we pay our vendors. So every department, again, is entering invoices for payment. Their supervisors are approving it. And then it comes into finance for our final processing. And then payroll here, this is how we pay our employees. So same concept as accounts payable. Then we have a bunch of other little programs I'm not going to go into. Happy to answer any questions on those. But for the sake of time, I'll just kind of highlight these major programs for us. I'm going to go back out to financial services and I'm going to go into Treasury. Here you can see, as you might imagine, that cashiering and payment processing or receipt processing is our largest program. So this is our staff, taking receipts, taking payments from our residents. This also includes some time from DPW, library, Parks and Rec, because they also have cashiering. You might think that customer service would be a large program for us, and it is. It's just broken into 2 smaller programs here. We have utility billing customer service, and we have general customer service, kind of all other customer service. So if you add these 2 up, it really is the next largest program in the Treasury division. Then we have accounts receivable. So accounts receivable is us billing people, whether it's for easy carts, which DPW is responsible for. It could be hazmats, which is the fire department. It could be parking permits. It could be space rental, lots of things that we bill for. And then kind of to round out the other top items, we have mail, so incoming, outgoing mail. We have utility billing. So this is our water and sewer billing process, which is done monthly for the different quarters or the different sections of the city. We also have bank recs and we have property tax administration. And then again, we have a bunch of other smaller ones happy to talk about, but not going to go into detail on. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. Next, I'm going to go into income tax. Here we only have 5 programs. Obviously, the largest one is working with our third-party contractor who processes all the income tax returns. Then over here, we have what our income tax administrator is working on. So you can see this one is primarily non-personnel costs, and these are going to be heavy on the personnel side. So we have the income tax withholding. This means the employers that are withholding, we are working with them internally. We're not having the third-party processor do that. Income tax compliance, working on following up on people who may not be paying that should be. Administration, general administration, and then customer service. Backing out into assessing. As you might imagine, the top one is the assessment roll prep and maintenance. So, getting the values out, getting ready for the tax billing, which the treasurer does. We also have the defending of assessments and appeals. So there's a process for someone to appeal their assessment. So this is the amount of time we spend doing that. And then we have the reinspection and inspection program. This is an annual program that we do. And this is really to pick a section of the city, make sure that what we see when we go out and do the inspection is what we have in our property records. So it's kind of a double check, kind of a canvassing type of process. We also have, customer service, Property valuation, this is really looking at sales study, market studies, and then personal property valuation. This is doing the personal property canvas. This is looking for any new businesses that may have left. So we make sure that we're taxing the right people, and then also sending out personal property statements and processing those. Again, lots of other smaller programs, board of review, records maintenance, sketching, lots of things there. One thing I'll show to you when you click into this assess, like any program, but this does give a description up here for anybody who isn't quite sure maybe what a header means. It may be helpful to read this description up at the top. As George pointed out, you can then dig in even further and look at different things in here, but that's, I think, something that's been helpful to me as I've clicked around in here. Now, with that, I know I went kind of fast, but if anybody has any questions specifically about finance services, I am happy to answer them.
Thanks, Jill.
And I think Scott House is up next.
Scott.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for being with us.
So I'm going to share my screen here. Make sure it comes up. All right. I'm going to arrange some things here. Can you still see my screen with the PBB?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to walk you through the DPW programs. And DPW is a big organization. So we have 77 employees. And in PBB, we have 74 separate programs that touch 21 areas outside of DPW. And with that, we have 12 main divisions that are shown here on the screen. Also, when you look at our total budget reflected here, it comes up to just over $20 million, and that does not include the capital projects. So I'm going to step in first into the water resource recovery facility. Now, the Water Resource Recovery Facility is a giant asset. It's a regional asset that treats the region's wastewater treatment for Meridian Township and Michigan State University. And you might not be aware, Michigan State pays 40% of all capital costs, and that includes replacement, major improvements. Meridian Township 33.3%, and we pay 26%. At the wharf, there's approximately 18 employees, and when we look at this, this is an enterprise activity, meaning that it's covered, the costs are covered by fees in regional contracts. Any given year, we will treat 4.5 billion gallons of wastewater a year and safely return it to the Red Cedar River. And we look at it, a lot of the costs are non-personnel, and I'm going to start driving into this. And the one thing that's amazing is the cost for electricity. It's just over $1.4 million. We're making major investments right now with the digester and other things to lower that, because anything we can do to lower that cost in the long term will pay off for the future to come. And we back off through there. Also at the wharf, we have maintenance, which is critical to maintain this infrastructure to keep it going. And we also have pump stations. And we have several pump stations to include the Woodingham pump station that's under construction right now. And we look at the wharf, a lot of this is non-personnel related. And we also want you to think about the wharf serves approximately 150,000 people in the region as it's a regional asset. Then we jump down to the water fund. And we look at water, our water program, that we have 5 programs there and approximately 5.7 employees employed through there. And we dig into that, showing that a lot of the costs are non-personnel. One of the biggest costs there, and we dig into that, is the purchase of water from Elmswood. So we'll buy roughly 812 million gallons of water from Elmswood each year. Elmswood is East Lansing Meridian Water and Sewer Authority. And that $1.8 million we pay for also pays for improvements to the plant and the well fields and other aspects of that. When we jump back into the water, we have other things that we do there that are important. We have a mist dig service where we have to locate the water lines. We have new construction taps. We maintain irrigation lines, and we maintain water tanks and other infrastructure to convey and store water. Related to water is we have the meter component. And we have 4 major programs here. Lead and copper is a big program for us. And with that, that's where We have an older water system, so each year we're actually under the recent rules from 2018, we're working to identify any ladder galvanized lines, and we're developing a long-term plan to replace those. And in fact, we requested a grant from Eagle, and we're looking for feedback on that, and that will help us in these efforts. But also in the system, this also pays for the meter reading. We have just over 8,000 meters. In the coming weeks here, we're going to be bringing in a contract to you to study our meter systems to improve the accuracy and the ability to do remote reads so someone can log in at any time. With all these components, there's a lot of activity from our meter shop here, from replacements, non-payment tagging, and customer service. Backing off from the meter shop, then we're going to jump to streets. Street fund, so this does not improve the capital, but we look at our street system, there's 6 programs here, roughly just under 10 employees. Our primary funding system for this comes from the Act 51 fuel tax that funds major and local streets by lane miles. A lot of these costs, again, are non-personnel, and they're going to be materials, equipment rental. And you look at the big operations here, it's going to be maintenance, which is going to be potholing, crack sealing, repairing pavement, snow and ice, which is very relevant for today in this time of year, maintaining traffic signs, pavement markings, bulk leaf collection that also serves beyond just it's not just get rid of leaves, it gets the leaves off the streets so the streets can drain. Also street sweeping. Both of these are kind of related in that we want the streets to be clear of debris, so when it rains or when it snows, it can melt and it can drain off. We also provide service to the local school district as well. We plow their parking lots for them. Going down next to sanitation. Sanitation's, this is we have 3 programs here, just over 7.5 employees. These services are funded via millage and fees. The sanitation millage pays for the bulk of the services, with fees for larger carts or for yard waste beyond the free days. And this pays for the curbside collection and drop-off collection of recycling, trash, and yard waste as well. In total, this is just over $2 million. But when we look at recycling, there's a lot of costs beyond personnel. When we dig in there, there's costs for the single stream recycling, but also when we look at this, the garage costs are high as well. And we look at sanitation and recycling collection, those trucks cost over $300,000 to purchase. Backing out, going next to the sewer fund. So our sewer system supports a similar population such as our water system, which is about 32,000 people. We have a crew of approximately, this fund funds approximately 4.76 employees. There are 5 programs here. And again, this is enterprise fund, similar to water and wastewater, and that fees pay for the service. So we have a pretty large system within our city already. We have 79 miles of sanitary sewer, 44 miles of combined, 62 miles of storm sewers. And our team will televise sewers, and they'll clean sewers and make sure that they properly flow, and they'll respond to emergencies. When we look at the programs that we have here, we have the collection of the maintenance, repair of underground pipes, open drains, fat and oil and grease response, removing debris from things improperly disposed of. Our combined sewer station, which is located off of Kalamazoo. And also we provide services to city facilities and parking ramps as well, helping them with their storm drainage needs. Next, jump into parks. Now this is a misnomer because this is the landscape maintenance for the entire city beyond parks. So we have 3 programs here. We have landscape maintenance, and in total we have 9.53 employees that do these 3 programs. And you see the cost distribution between personnel and non-personnel, and this is more personnel intensive. But we have 514 acres of parks. Our team mows 88 acres of parks, mows 23 acres of right-of-way, 15 acres of city property. In urban forestry, we have over 10,000 trees that we're responsible for maintaining and responding to if they're damaged in windstorms. And we plant over 100 trees a year. And we look at also, We have winter maintenance too, and this includes the sidewalks and trails and other things beyond the downtown. We plow over 55 miles of the 124 miles of sidewalks and 5 miles of trails. And we also provide winter maintenance support to government facilities. That's what those 9.5 employees are doing. Jumping next to admin, you're going to look at the big cost here, streetlights. This is a fixed cost of over $1 million. And we have not been budgeting for the expansion of streetlights due to the cost of that. In fact, that's why one of the ideas we were looking at the solar streetlights. How can we constrain these? And looking at these 14 programs, some big, some small. This is the DPW facilities. It's the customer service operation where someone will answer the phone. And we have over 9,000 calls a year that we'll answer. And we have other things, grants, and you can dig into the here Commission on the Environment, education. A lot of important things happen here. Next, followed by the fleet. So the city provides fleet support to the entire city. We have a series of mechanics, 5.81 employees are funded here for 3 programs, the primary program being the maintenance of the fleet. Also the Green Fleet program. We have 114 vehicle pieces of powered equipment, of many other ancillary equipment, which is trailers, lawnmowers, and other things. And we also have the fleet management, the long-term planning to make sure we're going in the right direction, managing service life. Jumping next to one of our most important and critical operations, engineering. Engineering has over 13 programs here, 7.11 employees. And the big things that engineering does, it manages the construction activity in the right-of-way, environmental programs, from stormwater to wastewater, EGLE permitting. It ensures site plans comply with our long-term interests, takes care of hazardous sidewalks, does federal aid transportation. A lot of important activity here. I'm gonna jump out of there. And then least but not last is our GIS. Geographical Information Systems here. We have 9 programs, 1 employee. This is our framework for our asset management systems, and it allows us to collect data and see things. So a lot of the maps you see on the website, and it helps us plan and layer data and helps us to plan our maintenance activities. And one last division is downtown maintenance, which takes care of the downtown litter, trash, and whatnot. So that's a pretty broad overview of the Department of Public Works, subject to your questions.
Thanks, Scott. We can move on to Tom in the Planning and Building Department.
Thanks, Scott. Actually, would you mind one quick thing from Scott? If you wouldn't mind pulling up, sorry, I'm trying to pull up what I was talking about. Like the bulk leaf program on screen share, that'd be great.
Sorry, Scott, I ended your screen share.
Sorry. Oh, my bad. Well, okay. So, I mean, the point that I wanted to make on that specifically was just kind of the difference in viewing priority-based budgeting versus, the document itself, right? Obviously, there is not one person going around in our bulk leaf program handling every curb in our entire city. It's just really speaking to the amount of staff time is put into that. And I just wanted to touch on that specifically because it's a program that affects a lot of people and it helps a lot of folks. And it does have a cost associated with it. But in the regular budget document, you might see those individuals as staff members, and you might see their line item as something that doesn't say bulk leaf program ambassador. Right. Yeah. You might see them as another DPW employee that might happen to also have a job that involves bulk leaf program. And so what you'll see on the FTE right there is 1.09. And that's the amount of staff time that it would take, of course, for, that program to succeed. And that involves the work of many people. So I just wanted to point it out, because I think it's a good example of how this kind of system gives you a little bit of a different perspective into the budget. So
that's a great point because DPW, we have a ton of small jobs that add up, and a lot of them are seasonally derived and they layer. So we have people that do a lot of important things many times over the year.
Right, and of course you touched on in the beginning of your statement, just touching on it's 77 employees right? And you're not, of course, going to see 5 here, 5 here, 5 here, whereas you might in the budget document that we're going to get a little bit later in the year. So just a little bit of different way to approach it. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you. And let me pull up my screen here. Can you see it?
Yep, it's there. You might want to, yeah, that's good, better.
Okay, so this is the Planning, Building, and Development Department. It includes 5 functional areas, including parking, which we'll get to on a different screen here. Really, when I think of PBD, I think really in terms of everything in the built environment. And obviously there's some crossovers with several other departments, including Department of Public Works, Fire, et cetera. But really, I think of the planning department as the built environment from concept to community building. And it really starts in planning and zoning in terms of both our long range planning, in terms of, comprehensive plan and other guiding documents that we develop. And then our current planning, which I think most people associate the planning department with, and that's really reviewing project proposals and having public hearings and other public meetings to discuss really the future of our city. So the big programs you'll see in planning and zoning have to do with the public hearings, all the planning that goes into that, and then the review of site plans. And we separate SUP applications just to kind of show that as a separate program. You can see this is site plan and SUP applications, and this is all the other site plan reviews that we do. We also spend quite a bit of time. You can see most of these are going to be personnel heavy because it takes people to review these plans and do zoning code amendments. And then citizen consultation, I think you'll see this across our department in every single one of our divisions. We do quite a bit of time and quite a bit of resource talking with citizens, talking with businesses about the code, about what they're trying to accomplish, and how they can try to make that fit within the framework of our ordinances. And then also we have, our historic district certificate of appropriateness. This would be also include, I think, the personnel involved in the HDC meetings, and then special plans. I think this is where things like the housing study, things like if we have a coordinated area plan or a targeted area plan, and then you can see in this particular fiscal year, very limited time and resources relating to the comprehensive plan. That's because we're in a cycle where it's been approved, and we're really just doing some minimal work to keep it going, and we'll ramp up again efforts to update that in the next couple of years. So that's planning and zoning. Building is really kind of the next step from when plans are approved to where they actually want to be constructed. And this is really ensuring that the plans are really finalized in line with our building codes and other trade codes. But then also that the building construction itself is aligned with those plans and ultimately is constructed to code. So you'll see a lot of the big program buckets here are going to relate to the actual inspections that we do. Again, if you look, it's going to be quite a bit of personnel involved in that, but also some technologies and other resources that are needed. And then in terms of kind of the plan review and construction, actual permitting, those are going to be the other two big buckets where we spend a lot of our time. And these are going to be personnel heavy as well. Again, you'll see the citizen consultation that's specific to our building regs, and then some other sort of areas related to kind of enforcement activity stop work orders, going through the unsafe buildings, and life safety, etc. We broke out the construction inspections from life safety inspections, and that's kind of an important kind of delineation from our perspective and kind of different programs. So then in terms of housing, we have a very robust rental license program here, as you might expect, being a Big Ten town. And so a lot of the resources in our housing division, again, personnel heavy, are going to relate to the rental license program. So both the inspections, which is a 13-month cycle, excuse me, and then the rental license renewal. We also have initial license, which obviously starts the process, and then every year there's a renewal. We spend quite a bit of time dealing with the 1,700 or so rental properties that we have in our city. Again, citizen consultation, you'll notice personnel heavy. We also have quite a bit related to enforcement in this division as well. So you'll see renting without a license, property code enforcement, vacant property enforcement, owner occupied housing enforcement, and then a bucket for the investigations. And then obviously supporting the commission as well. So moving along to our largest bucket, community and economic development. You can see there's a very large program here, redevelopment support. This is almost all non-personnel, and it's mostly related to our pretty extensive brownfield redevelopment program. We have 17 active plans currently, and they are need to be administered on an annual basis. So that's where most of the personnel costs is going to come in. We also manage the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Most of the non-personnel is going to be related to reimbursement of developer eligible activities. And the lion's share of those are going to be public infrastructure and environmental remediation, which is in line with the city's policy on TIF. We also have several other buckets. You can see the LDFA. We've allocated no personnel to it. We do attend the LDFA meetings, but essentially this program is managed through a partnership with the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. We get a fee for administering our piece of it, and then we pass over the remaining dollars to them to manage that program. We have a number of other programs related to downtown. Most of these are going to be funded through the DDA. So you'll see a small personnel figure, which is a portion of time from Mr. Cummins and Ms. Pope and myself, and then also Mr. Shepard, allocated to many of these different programs. So you've got the downtown sidewalk and infrastructure projects. We had a major project cross up between fiscal year 20 and 21. DDA downtown repairs and maintenance. The lion's share of this is a partnership with DPW. They provide, as Mr. House mentioned earlier, some of all of the downtown repairs or downtown maintenance. And then we have things that need to be repaired that are under the DDA's auspices. We also manage the evergreen properties, which are owned by the DDA. There's a number of projects that come about that will need to be managed throughout the course of the year. They take a lot of different shapes and sizes. Obviously, business and citizen consultation and meeting support, run some of our community development programs, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we're going to see a lot of changes between what was budgeted, I think, in fiscal year 21 and how this was ultimately operationalized, as we needed to really adjust our work, especially in community and economic development, in terms of addressing the COVID situation. So I think we will probably end up creating some new programs related to business support activities, and kind of we'll get into, I think, some conversations about how some of the dollars that, like business marketing and business relations, we had events planned, we had various programs planned, and those were all needed to be pivoted from, and those monies were reallocated to business support, those types of things. So finally, I want to mention, and I got to go out to parking. Parking, again, you're going to see some major buckets here. Not really a surprise. The two big pieces of running parking enterprise are going to relate to the actual parking access and revenue control system operations. That's the kind of the brains and the nuts and bolts of the system, and then obviously maintaining the garages. Both of these are going to be non-personnel heavy. Again, the customer service bucket is going to be personnel heavy. And you can see, we spend quite a bit of resources managing customer service. We also spend quite a bit of time at the DMB meetings and developing programs in cooperation with those folks, as well as in the parking task force. And then I guess, we separate the lot maintenance and the garage maintenance as separate programs, essentially running 3,200 spaces. Again, this is probably an area where we're going to see, probably some trimming of the maintenance and some, I think, as we get into the budget conversation, some conversation about, how to survive the COVID experience as an enterprise in downtown. So ultimately, I think we spread out the 30 full-time employees and 10 part-time employees we have between these 5 divisions and accomplish quite a bit. And I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Fehrenbach, you talked a little bit about the business support aspect as well. I was just wondering, would, let's say lost opportunity costs show up in that as well? So let's say, obviously we got rid of some restaurant licensing fees as well. Would that end up showing up in PBB in this, or would that be more attributed to a lack of revenue in our proposed budget document?
So as I understand it, this is part and parcel with the approved fiscal year 21 budget. So it's really just it's a tool for you to sort of see how the programs are spread across the departments and how we allocate resources to them. So those types of changes that will happen in the middle of a fiscal year, for instance, will really not show up in this document. If you make changes for fiscal year 22 and then we update those into this portal, that's where you'd be able to compare over years and see the changing sizes and that sort of thing.
No, of course. And sorry, I didn't mean that it would show up necessarily in this. It was more just trying to understand whether or not that would be something that, it would be showing up, let's say, in the next year's cycle if, we are going to continue helping out businesses, whether that would show up on here or that would just kind of show up as a loss of revenue. But that makes sense. Right.
Yeah, I think essentially, any money that you're allocating to programs would show up there. And then to the extent you're taking it away from some other program or you're no longer creating a revenue stream, you wouldn't have those monies to allocate to said programs. That makes sense.
Yep.
And I think I'm passing it over to Chief Johnson.
So are we going to get a break?
Oh, you know what? It is actually 8:58. Yeah, let's take a 7-minute break, let's say, and get back at 9:05. Looks real. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I have a little alarm that goes off at 9 o'clock on my phone just to make sure that I do go for a break, but I appreciate Dana
Yeah.
putting it out there right before.
Yeah, I thought the timing was
No,
better.
it was perfect. I just honestly didn't realize the time, and of course, the second that my alarm would have gone off, we would have been fully into another presentation. So,
Are we all set for Chief Johnson to get started?
Ron, you with us?
Present.
Yep. Great. All right. Go ahead.
Take it away, Chief.
Okay. Good evening. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about the police department and our operations that we do for the city. We have a close to $13.3 million budget with 49 sworn police officers and another 49 civilians who work for the police department. The majority of our resources are in the patrol operation, as you probably could imagine. $3.3 million in patrol operations. The majority of that, of course, is our personnel. And of course, in patrol operations, we handle all the calls for service. We traffic enforcement, dealing with crimes, investigating, enforcing all the state and local crimes, federal crimes, and things of that nature. And the calls for service, so anytime someone picks up the phone to call us for emergency or non-emergency assistance, we are there, as you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 a year. Last year in 2020, we had 18,500 calls for service, and that includes anyone picking up the phone for anything. And out of that, well, I break that down a little bit. Out of the 18,500, 12,600 calls were actually people calling the phone, calling for our services and things like that. The other 5,800 calls were when the police officers were actually initiating something or getting on the radio, asking they're going to get out of the car to do some liquor inspections downtown or do some foot beat, or they're doing some follow-up investigations on a crime or things of that nature, or even traffic stops. Anytime our officer keying that microphone, we're capturing that activity. So the majority of our time, of course, is in patrol operations. Another big box we have is this community policing that falls under patrol operations, because this actually part of our budget has been in our budget for almost over 25 years. And back 25 years ago, the federal government had authorized grant money for us to get police officers specifically for community-based policing. That was back in the 90s. And so we took advantage of those grants over 3 different grant cycles. We had 6 officers in that particular group working specifically on community-based policing. As that money dissipated and our priorities changed from a budgeting standpoint and things of that nature, we lost those positions in that community-based policing. But we as a department felt it was extremely important. What we were doing in community-based policing was extremely important for the community. So we had started to allocate time out of our patrol operations and have them start working on community-based policing initiatives. And that has been continuing on up until this point. So it's a huge piece of our budget, but we think it's important for us. We expect this piece to get even larger in the future years, because since I've been on board, we are changing our whole community-based policing initiatives, and it's going to look totally different to some extent, where not just patrol is going to be helping in community-based policing, but the entire department is going to have their hands in part of this community-based policing initiatives. And everyone's going to take a little more ownership of the whole city and some of the things that we're responsible for. So we're really excited about that piece of the puzzle that we're going to be increasing as time goes on. Another area that we deal with in our police department is our parking code enforcement. As you can imagine, we deal with all of our parking enforcement, all of our permit parking, all of our 2 to 6 violations at nighttime. And we also deal with the code, as you may know. We're dealing with all the outside code violations. We deal with the tall grass violations, the snow removal violations, things of that nature. that we have to deal with. We have one supervisor, one full-time employee, and 6 part-time who actually work in our PACE department, and they do a great job for that. Another group that we have is our jail services. We have 3 full-time jail service officers and 5 part-time jail service officers in our group. We have 7 cells that service our department, and we handle anywhere between misdemeanors, felonies, things like that. And the jail is also staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, also throughout the year. We have a few jail facilities in the county. So the Ingham County is the main jail facility, and then Lansing Police has a jail facility, and then we have also a 7-cell jail facility, and we can house people up to 72 hours before we have to commit them to a larger facility. More than likely, it's going to be the Ingham County Sheriff's Office. So we provide that service to our citizens. Our records management group, of course, manage all of our records that comes through the police department. They are the ones who entering all of our data into our state records management system. They maintain our Michigan crime reporting reports. They report all of our Clery Act documents, and also all of our state stuff that we have to abide by. They keep us in compliance with all the stuff that we are required to do and submit with all of our documentation. We have 1 supervisor back there full-time and 3 full-time clerical who staff that. And all of our FOIAs through the police department comes through our records management group, and they handle all of our FOIA requests that come through the police department. Our criminal investigations group, of course, handles our criminal investigations along with this detective bureau administration. Those are supervisors who are back there. Currently, we have 1 supervisor back there and 4 detectives who are dealing with our criminal investigations. So what happens, as I can imagine, we take an initial call on the patrol division, and the patrol officer will do some follow-up work. But if it becomes a lengthy and drawn out and complicated investigation, they ship that report over to our criminal investigations group, and then they'll do more follow-up work in interviewing our suspects and victims and witnesses and things like that, canvassing neighborhoods and things. So they do a great job for us back in our criminal investigations group. These 2 boxes here up top deals with our police administration and our leadership administration, dealing with the police department. Myself, the deputy chief, and the captain, we work on our police administration along with 2 administrative assistants. And of course, we manage the police department policies, anything to deal with budgeting and things that with the police department, the 3 of us oversee that group. This piece right here is our leadership administration piece. And this piece could get a little bigger next year because, as you may know, we have applied to be accredited, and it's going to take us 2 years to get accredited through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. And the 3 of us are spearheading that accreditation process. It's a huge process. We're going to be asking many more people in our organization to help us with this accreditation process, but this box could change in its complexity just because of the amount of work that we have to put in to get our accreditation approved and things of that nature. This group over here next to our patrol operations is actually our special events group. So anytime we have a special event in the city and then we allocate resources right to a particular event, homecoming parade, summer solstice, a jazz festival, farmers market, East Lansing parades, anything that we want some officers did specifically for that particular event, we utilize people in our patrol division, and also any other sworn police officers in the department actually can work these special events. In this area does take up some of our resources, and it's a cost that we deal with every year. Unfortunately, we have another special event that we've already been asked to help at the Capitol on Sunday, and so these 8 officers will be getting them, and they'll be working on this. It's considered a special event, not necessarily a popular one, but we'll be assigning people that, and those are the type of activities that come out of that particular large bucket item that we would have. One thing that we have also that the council and Mr. Lahanas came up with and created this past summer is our Community and Proactive Services Unit. And it's a great unit. We finally got all of our people on board. We have 2 full-time social workers, and we have 4 part-time neighborhood resource specialists. And they are in this smaller box down here. And not too sure, this box may not change its size, but their resources are going to be over in our community policing a lot more than we have in the past. And they're going to be an integral part of another program that we'll be initiating somewhere in our group here, dealing with the neighborhood resource teams. And it's a multi-department teams that we are creating for the whole city. We're going to spearhead it, and we're inviting all of the departments to join us to help us. Our goal is to identify problems that are continually happening in our city and create and identify long-term solutions to those problems. And the police is not we are far from the only answer to some of the problems that we are coming across in our community. I think our community and proactive services group have some great resources that can help us in the neighborhood resource teams, our neighborhood resource specialists. They're looking at problems, and we are going to invite other departments to help us because we've had these teams up before. And the other departments were extremely helpful. Just making everyone think differently about how we can come up with a better solution to a problem in our city. And we have people who sit around the table dealing with discussing issues that we may not be police related, it may not be fire related, it may not be the building and department, but we work together and try and create some viable solutions. So we're excited about that new program that is started up, and it's going to be a new program that's going to be in our PBB model for fiscal year 2022. That's it in a nutshell, and we'll try and run through a little bit, trying to respect your time and things like that, but I'm of course always open for questions you may have for me.
All right, any questions for Chief? All right, keep in mind this is an overview from last year, and I'm sure we're going to be, as the timeline is going to be laid out, we're going to be getting into the weeds on some of these issues in the proposed budget in the future coming weeks and months.
Great.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief Johnson. We've got Chief Talaferro.
Chief to Chief. So.
Yep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Share out. Okay, I will be presenting on behalf of the fire department, and good afternoon or good evening to members of council, city manager, community members. I think you've gone through with the number of the other department heads, so this should be familiar. But looking at where most of our costs and our expenses allocated, if you look at our department, emergency medical services makes up the bulk of our responses and our time, where our time is dedicated. And in 2019, we had about 5,500 requests for service, fire, EMS, or other. And of that, about 75% is typically EMS in a given year. Last year, we dropped by about 1,000 calls. That's likely attributed to COVID and the loss of response to game day events at Michigan State. But if you look at, we're allocating about 1.7 million, roughly there. Total budget is 11 million, just over 11 million. We have revenue of about 5,850,000. And our budget, our staff is 16 firefighter officers per shift, 24-hour shift. So we have 3 shifts of 16 that make up 48 staff that are dedicated primarily to fire suppression and EMS. Our staff is cross-trained, so all of our supervisors, they all can work and operate as both firefighters and paramedics. And we use the EMS supplements all of our fire suppression. So when we have a fire event, we also send our medics over, and they assist on any fireground operations as well. Fire suppression represents, again, another one of our larger responsibilities, and it's probably about just shy of $800,000 in total costs that are allocated toward that. Much of that, let's see, we look at our operating costs. We spend about $600,000 in, just shy of $600,000, $595,000 in fleet costs for fire and EMS, and our apparatus obviously has to be much larger because of the types of buildings and facilities that we provide fire protection to, and that includes the large apartment complexes, and then obviously the infrastructure at MSU. I think one of the values over time in looking at the PBB will be looking at the boxes and the trends and see what gets larger, what gets smaller, and where our new programs are emerging and where others are dying. And so we are, looking forward to using this data for that type of analysis. Of course, when we set it up, you have to make certain decisions. So we created a category called special operations, which actually could be separated by program. So that includes our hazardous materials, high angle rescue, confined space rescue, structural collapse, water rescue, and tower rescue. And when I look at this graph, I can, for me, I can see the impact of the university in a number of ways, because a lot of departments our size would likely not have a lot of these special operations responsibilities. Most of those are driven because of the complexity of the infrastructure we have here. And you can see here, we also spend a significant portion of our time in our planning and response for different MSU events. And so obviously, again, you can kind of track the impact of some of our responsibilities there. We spend a significant amount of time in training, and much of that is training that's required by some type of mandate. So for licensing, for example, all of our paramedics have to do a certain number of continuing education hours annually to renew and keep their license current. We also have to do a lot of training for those special operation types of events that are required by MIOSHA or some other standard. And so much of this is driven out of need to meet a standard or to satisfy some unfunded mandate. We spend a lot of time in emergency planning and training, and I think we made a decision not to separate out, for example, COVID expenses this year because it kind of overlaps a lot of different things. So it affects obviously our EMS operations, but our in-house all hazard training. There are layers of training that went to EMS operations, layers that went to fire operations, certain amount that we have to do with the general public and others. And so I think it's all kind of comprehensively captured throughout the document. Let's see. Areas where we've seen a lot of growth is some of our plan review and our inspection and compliance. And so we did add a fire inspector in the last fiscal year. And that had to do with all the plan reviews that are coming in as a result of the new projects and new development. A lot of times, each project has a number of iterations that are submitted, and then they're reviewed, they're corrected, or there's a request for some corrections, then they're submitted once again. And so it's a continuous process, and it is very staff and labor intensive. But we have, I think, addressed that, and we've seen a much significant growth in our plan review and in our inspection time. We're looking at things like social media and public communications. Those things are, we expect to see those continue to grow. And if you look at social media, especially with regard to its implications on emergency management and how the public receives information from us as an agency and how we have a relationship that's established with our community. A lot of that's driven by social media activity. And so that's something that I would anticipate growing and becoming more prominent in our work and our work responsibilities. Let's see. I think, and I know we haven't gone through other areas, but as you guys look through the PBB model, I think there's benefit in sometimes doing a cross-reference, like looking at some of the things that we do as a program and where we do also have significant cost recovery or potential for cost recovery. And we looked at, for example, in our alarm response, there's certainly an opportunity to probably create some type of cost recovery ordinance there. We, in the past, have been a little slow to recommend that because we don't want people to disable alarms in an effort to avoid a fine. One of the things that is very evident for us is that because of the size of our fire department, which is the 2 stations and 6 people on duty each day, and actually we go down to as few as 11 per day with time off. But it's imperative that we get on a fire scene quickly and that we get extinguishment started very quickly because the size of the structures is so large that we could be overwhelmed very quickly. And so there's a lot of attention paid to having good alarm systems in place and kind of proactively addressing those kind of response issues. But it's certainly something that we're keeping our eye on, and it's something that obviously we could look at down the road. Let's see. I think we're also seeing a lot, and we're going to have to embed our IT and software costs in. We're seeing a lot of things. So in the police side, they have their records management. Our records management, much of it is our patient care reports. We have to do electronic emergency medical reports that are required by law. And that can be very time consuming. And then also when we look at FOIA requests and inspection and compliance, we're doing a lot more across different software platforms, and our IT costs and our software costs, I do anticipate going up. A lot of those things are moving to cloud-based models. And so they're kind of subscription-based, and that's something that we see and anticipate, again, going up with the mobile data and tablets and so many things that are moving to some type of electronically based operation. So I don't know. I guess I'll just cut it short here and just see if there are any questions at all. But
any questions for Chief? All right. Thank you, Chief, for being here. And I would agree with your initial assessment regarding the alarms. And I think that that'd probably be the reaction of some people, which is obviously not the behavior that we'd want. But I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about your perspective on that, if other communities have done something similar of what they've experienced with it. So
we'll do. We'll keep researching that and get you information on that.
Great. Thank you. Mr. McCaffrey.
Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
You might want to change along the top to overall tab, but a little higher. Far right. There you go.
Got it.
Oh, you still got to pick, yep, Parks and Rec, great.
There you go. All right. Well, good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I'm here representing the Department of Parks and Recreation this evening, of course. one of the things I always like to start out with is our little tagline, or I like to call it our little tagline for the Department of Parks and Recreation, and that's we encourage active, healthy, creative, and environmentally friendly lifestyles. And we do that through a wide range of activities, facilities, events, programs, services that we offer through your Department of Parks and Recreation. So that's kind of where we start on this. We have in the Parks and Recreation Fund about a $4.5 million budget on an annual basis, of which probably about 2.1 million is general fund support that City Council authorizes the transfer from the general fund to the Parks and Recreation Fund, and that makes up about 46% of our expenses on an annual basis. And then the remaining about $2.4 million in expenses are recovered typically through various fees and charges and what have you that we have for the offering of our programs. We have 16 full-time staff folks in the Department of Parks and Recreation, and we typically have over 63,000 hours of part-time staff, and that equals about 30.4 full-time equivalents. But a large percentage of what we do in the Department of Parks and Recreation relies heavily on part-time work. Much of the staff tend to be younger folks, particularly when we're talking about our school-age childcare services and or like lifeguarding and or programs such as the Aquatic Center. But I'm going to start out with the school-age children childcare program. This is our before and after school program, which is held in all of the East Lansing Public Schools elementary schools. And that's held throughout the entire academic school year. And in addition to that, we have our summer camp program that's offered through the school-age child care program. And that's covered in this particular program. You see it talks about 12.27 FTEs in there, but it's actually 2 full-time staff folks and the rest are all part-time staff that primarily from college-age Michigan State University Lansing Community College students is who typically fund or staff that program for us. So that's the first one that I wanted to highlight there real quickly. Secondly, I wanted to go over to the Aquatic Center real quick. That program includes the entire operation of the Aquatic Center on an annual basis, all the cost of maintaining the Aquatic Center on an annual basis, and the cost of staffing it on a seasonal basis for the seasonal Aquatic Center program. Next, I go to athletics, and I show you that the athletics program, which includes our youth sports, youth baseball and softball, our youth basketball program. It includes rental reservations for our East Lansing baseball club, as well as for the summer softball tournaments and what have you. Then the softball complex, this cost of approximately $149,000 a year is what it costs to maintain the softball complex. Our softball complex is maintained by our Department of Public Works. And this is, once again, the cost associated with operating the softball complex on an annual basis. Next, I'll go to the soccer complex. This is a similar type of thing in that it's maintained, but the soccer complex, the turf is maintained through a turf maintenance contract with a vendor that's hired on an annual contract. In fact, within about the next 3 or 4 weeks, we'll be coming to City Council for renewal of the contract for the maintenance of the soccer complex. And then this also includes the cost associated with staffing the program. We don't run soccer league programs. We sort of facilitate we have the facility, and our staff kind of work with the various clubs and what have you in the community to ensure we have that program. Then I'm going to go to recreation and arts here real quickly. This is all of our classes and activities, including fitness classes, dancing classes, enrichment, arts, pottery, ceramics, our summer specialty camps and what have you. And that represents the cost associated with the recreation and arts program and classes. And then the All of Us Express Children's Theater program, which includes the cost of producing, directing, casting, and offering the shows produced by the Children's Theater, as well as drama and acting workshops and what have you on an annual basis. The community events program is includes our jazz festival, which is a significant portion of the community events budget. It also includes the farmers market, which is our annual our market that goes throughout the months of May, towards the end of May and all of June, July, August, September, and into October. And then the community events that include the children's concert series, the summer concert series, Play in the Park, and events of that nature. Then going over to the Hannah Community Center, the Hannah Community Center building budget includes the cost associated with making the community center available in our community. This is the maintenance cost, this is the repair cost, the custodial cost, all of the utilities, and what I would call the cost of making sure that we have the infrastructure available in order to have the community center. When you look then at the Hannah Guest Services budget, this will be where we start to look at the staffing of the community center, including the front desk staff, the individuals that you see when you walk in the front door to the community center. And they're sort of always handling the day-to-day requests of individuals when they come into the building, as well as handling all the telephone operations, requests, handling all the registration, handling all of those types of things. We have our rental reservations and what have you that we look at through the Hannah Community Center guest services budget. And that's how that particular function is, our program is taken care of. And then finally, with respect to the Hannah Community Center, the Hannah Swimming Pool, which is the sort of staffing operations, the lifeguards and what have you, to operate the programs that are held within the community center swimming pool on an annual basis. The very smallest little sliver kind of program that you see in the very lower corner is the Park Stewardship Program. And this includes primarily the oversight of the volunteer program, like the Second Saturday Stewardship Program, as well as any other volunteer programs that are facilitated in that Park Stewardship Program. Administration includes then obviously construction administration for our Parks Capital Projects Program, which over the course of the last few years with the county trails and millage, as well as the availability now of the income tax and our ongoing associations with the Natural Resources Trust Fund, has become a far more robust program. And you can see the other various programs that are involved with respect to our department administration. And then finally, four programs within the government buildings, which includes City Hall, all of the costs associated with making sure City Hall is available to the community, utilities, custodial services, and maintenance and repairs associated with government buildings. So that is a very quick overview of the Department of Parks and Recreation. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. McCaffrey? All right, thank you very much, sir.
We're on to Kristen Shelley.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen to come up. Did it come up?
Yep,
Oh.
you are all
it
good.
did? Okay, great. Sorry, you guys all went very small. Before I get started, I just want to share that tonight There was a wonderful program in partnership with the MLK Commission and LAFCU and the East Lansing Public Library celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. And it was a story time, but it had the most beautiful rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing by Rodney Page. And you can view it on the LAFCU YouTube page, and I suggest you do because it's worth listening to, and it'll bring tears to your eyes. So that's where I'm running from. So from story time to budget. So the library, as you know, has a budget of about $2.3 million in a good year or a more normal year. And the budget comes from 2 millages. And the millages, one is voted on by the people and one is approved by City Council. And in 2022, we will have to go back out to the people to renew the millage, the 1 millage that is voted on. And 2 millages is the max that by library law in Michigan that a municipal library can levy. So we have, so that is the majority of our budget. We also get penal fines, which is a whole nother council meeting, and donations, all of which are down this year significantly. And then before the pandemic, we had, the board had approved to eliminate overdue fines for the library. And we had planned on doing that in July. Of course, that happened in March when we closed our doors and we couldn't really charge people overdue fines. So all of those numbers are down. All of those revenues are down this year. The library has 27 staff, 5 of which are degreed librarians. So they have a master's in library science. And 7 of the staff are full-time. And just a reminder that the library is not part of the city's general revenue fund. Again, we are mostly property taxes and then some other revenues that come in. We get about 22,000 visits a month in a normal year and circulate about 34,000 items, both digitally and physically per month. And we answer between 4,600 and 5,000 reference questions in a month. Our brand is information, and that is collecting and disseminating information in many different formats. Our brand is not books, although books is one way that we disseminate that information. So when you look at our overall library budget and our tree plot, our largest buckets are collection, development, and maintenance, which is the collection, which makes sense if our brand is information, and this is one of our forms of information. Collection development includes books, physical and digital, DVDs, CDs, pretty much anything that you could check out either digitally or physically from the library. And it includes our databases, magazines, periodicals, all of that. And it's what people come into the library for or go online to check out. And then our next biggest budget is customer service. And customer service touches all parts of our business. So, I mean, everything we do is related back to customer service. We take customer service to the nth degree because we understand that the taxpayers are paying for their library and what they want. And they want to get what they want. So customer service is checking books in and checking books out. It's dealing with reference questions. It's our self-checkout. And it's readers listening and viewing advisory, which we do on a regular basis. But it's also, you know, referring people to other organizations or providing them just basic general information. I do have public computer lab, which is also a big section. However, these 2 buckets work very closely together because the public computer lab are our free computers, our free Wi-Fi, our integrated library service system, which is also here called Sierra Library System, which then goes back to customer service and then back to the collection development. Because the Sierra Library Services platform, which is our integrated library service, runs the library. without it, we'd still be writing down due dates and writing out what everybody checks out, and be working pretty much from a 1950s standpoint of a library. What we do know, after this year, is that if you look at our collection maintenance, so operating costs, we've got kind of just about 40% as electronic resources, and over 50% are our actual physical collection. This is going to change, and it already has changed. Our electronic resources and our digital resources are now more than half of the collection development budget. And that was quickly driven by closing down and making our collection accessible to patrons during the pandemic. And then, let's see. So I talked about technology. Technology is going to grow hugely. That's the one other bucket we have seen that we really need to put money into. We have really good Wi-Fi, which has been great. People have been pulling into our parking lot throughout the entire pandemic using our Wi-Fi, but we're going to have to up our technology services and our infrastructure. And we're slowly starting to do that, but technology is hugely expensive and keeps going up in cost rather than flattening. And that is where we're seeing some of our greatest needs in our budget. And then I have smaller buckets of youth services, teen services, adult services, outreach, and our pop-up mobile library. Those are all programs. Those are all what we do outside of our walls, or our story times, our after-school team program, our cultural and educational programs, and those have continued, but on a virtual basis. And we've lost some of our attendance because it is all virtual. But going forward, this bucket and the outreach bucket will probably merge together, because our outreach will be done via our mobile van, which we got in October. And that also goes back to the public computer lab, because the mobile van is equipped with Wi-Fi, and we'll be able to take 3D printers out on our mobile van. The other thing I want to touch with is that libraries, not just the East Lansing Public Library, but the libraries have worked for years to bridge the digital divide, and that has become even more important during the pandemic. And again, that's why we're really investing in the public computer lab. We actually just got 20 Chromebooks that we are pairing with hotspots that will circulate out to people. We were able to do that through CARES Act money. So it's a federal grant money. And then that's the other thing that we're going to look at, which isn't reflected in here, but our grants and our applying for grants is going to increase as well. And then facilities, and I know facilities is kind of a whole different thing, but when you're in a 1962, 1963 mid-century modern building, it suddenly becomes very important. And the infrastructure of the library needs to be updated probably 25 years ago. But we're going to work on doing that, and we're going to spend over $1 million of our fund balance on infrastructure work this year, and probably bleed into next fiscal year. And that is a new HVAC system. The electrical panel is from 1962, so the electric will all be redone. Sidewalks out front are going to be redone, and 2,300 square feet of the roof will be done. So that's going to kind of take a good portion of our money. Libraries do not spend down typically their entire fund balance, because we don't have ways of increasing money. We can't go out and increase fines to get more money. I mean, a quarter fine doesn't bring in a ton of money. So so that is one big worry as we look forward, and hence why we're looking at more and more grants going forward. So that's pretty much the library budget. I'm more than willing to go through anything. I think as if we were doing this now, these buckets would look very different. I think customer service and collection development would still be our biggest buckets, but then I think technology would be an even a greater portion. Any questions?
I had a quick question, Director Shelley. Eliminating overdue fines, how much money did that affect? What was the effect of that on the budget?
Roughly $20,000. We still charge fines on some things like hotspots, but we wouldn't have been able to charge fines this whole year anyways. So, so that's been different. The other thing that we haven't been able to do is that we do charge people who do not live in the city of East Lansing for library cards, and we haven't been able to do that since March as well. So we have been providing online library cards to people who apply for them.
Sorry, guys, my my mouse died right as I was trying to unmute. Any other questions for Kristen?
Just an observation.
Yep.
I am seriously disappointed that all of those library fines that I pay haven't made a bigger dent in your budget. I mean, I felt like I was doing my part there, but I do appreciate you waiving the fines. And more importantly than that, I moved here largely because of the library. It's just such a great community hub. It's a great collection. And I like all the departments in the city, Public Works, you name it. But the library is just a very special place. So thank you for all you do.
I hope we can open up soon.
Me too.
Just out of curiosity, Kristen, how long would a book have to be overdue for it to amount to $20,000? Because if you want, we could plant one in Lisa's house. And
did you see the Seinfeld episode ever of the library overdue book?
from 300 BC, maybe.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I can answer that. Actually, they just charge you the cost of the book at a certain point. Not that I do know that from firsthand experience, but they were really nice. When I give the book back, they waive the fine. Going now.
Anyway, any other questions for Kristen? All right. Thank you very much for being here. George?
Well, thank you to everybody for the presentations and for council's patience. It's a lot of information, but I really think it shows the great power of this tool to be able to explore where the budget dollars are being spent and where you're allocating resources. And if you take a lot of time now sort of seeing the introduction to click around in it, I think it'll sort of be more useful to you now, hopefully, as a tool for figuring out what you want to look at it more in depth. Obviously tonight, we're at a late point, so we won't drag this out anymore, but if there's things you want to have over the coming weeks, additional presentations, deeper dives, looks at any specific area, questions for us, we'd be happy to accommodate that and work that into the process over the coming weeks. At this point, I can pull up the schedule.
Please do.
Nicole can show that, and then we are done with our section. I mentioned that we're starting the budget process earlier here with this information. Let's go to, okay, so a lot of information on this slide. We see December 2020, so about a little over a month ago, we internally started the budget process from finance department, looking at our costs of our personnel costs and all of that. So that process has begun. This is January 12th PBB discussion. February 16th, a month from now, we'll have the 5-year forecast and capital improvements plan. That gives us that first good picture of what the general fund is shaping up to look like, as well as our 5-year future. And then we start with the preliminary budget. We go back and put the budget together. So if there's things between now and February 16th and beyond that you want to see more of, less of, areas of emphasis, this is a great time to sit down with us to talk about it, to talk through it even in the PBB format or other formats. And then you see obviously the budget work session schedule all laid out here, finally leading to an adopted budget on May 25. So with that, if council has any questions, this is really the start of the process. Lots of steps to come, but feel free to talk to me about what types of things in addition to that would be useful, and we'll be happy to accommodate that. and make sure that this meets council's needs moving forward.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, just encouraging members of council, ask questions. Definitely bother George at late hours of night, and make sure to include Jill on those too. No, but I'm saying this is, the PBB gives us a good introduction, I'd say, into the document that we're going to be getting in early April. Of course, seeing where money has been allocated before in this past year, what programs they've been, I think seeing it in this way is a little bit more digestible, certainly. But as we go into the budget document that we're going to be getting in April, you're going to see longer explanations, understanding of changes in budget, changes in staff, and changes in allocation of resources. So please ask questions. This is the time, certainly, to put a priority on individual aspects. Myself and the city manager had this conversation a little while ago, really just highlighting the fact that unfortunately, because this is going to be a little bit more virtual, you know, it's going to be somewhat difficult to be hands-on in this experience. So starting this process early rather than later, making sure that it was very apparent that if we wanted to dive into certain areas, we need to voice that, and we need to make sure that that's something that staff knows is a priority for us is really important. So I certainly will be doing that over the next few weeks. I'm looking forward to getting the document in early April, but before that, I will be asking a good amount of questions as we go forward. So thank you to everybody that stayed on the line with us. Thank you to all the staff that are working on this. Thank you especially to Jill and her team for putting together what is going to be a really, really comprehensive budget document, our 5-year forecast, which is going to be coming up here soon, and really all the work that everybody's putting in to a very difficult time with a really important process.
Thank you, Mayor.
Great. All right, with that, I believe that is our last. Oh, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I had a question kind of pointed towards George, possibly pointed towards Jill. I do know that COVID expenses and overruns and all of that sort of stuff is kind of baked into each department's considerations. I'm sure that they know much more, you know, how their department has been impacted by COVID. I didn't know if it made sense to have a presentation about kind of what we think that's going to look like going forward. I mean, I'm just kind of projecting my imagination into the future and thinking things like, you know, laid off service industry workers, and, you know, the continuing drain on our parking fund, and even, you know, the library not being open for services. And so I don't know, I mean, I imagine obviously we're going to talk to that when we talk to each department, but I didn't know if it meant, if it made sense to have an update. I guess I'm also kind of thinking about the income tax as well, projecting what possible impact that would have, because it's just such a big chunk.
I think it was the end of November or December when we came with a pretty detailed look at sort of what we were thinking of with the budget for this year. We will be working on and are tracking for a budget amendment that will sort of try to pull this all together. I think we wanted a little bit more time to see how the year develops, but we've already obviously started our cost savings measures. We've started implementing the furloughs already. So there's been a number of things, and obviously holding off expenses. So I think that we're getting closer to the fact that we're going to be bringing a budget amendment to council, and that's going to have quite the big drivers of cost there, from you know, lower fees from fines and costs, lower ambulance revenue, lower parking revenue, and all the things to the good. So we're going to have to you know, get that to council. Certainly before this budget is approved, you will be seeing a budget amendment.
That would be really helpful for me to see. I mean, I think this was good to have an overview of kind of what our normal budget looks like, I guess. And then, if, you know, to contrast that with really an aggregation of all of the changes that we've had to make this year to accommodate that. And then I'm just kind of, I guess my worst case scenario is that even if the virus numbers drop, we're still going to have things that follow us through, and the state aid is probably not going to be quite as aggressive once we're through the worst of the outbreak, because they also don't have any money. So just kind of, even though the situation might not be as bad next year, I kind of feel like our budget might be worse. I don't know, maybe I'm being
Yeah, and that really is going to be a challenge, is figure out what are the short-term revenue challenges that are going to be 1 year, or what are the ones that are going to bounce. So that's part of the whole budget amendment we're going to be looking at and seeing what do we think is short-term, what do we think is systemic, and how do we address it.
That would be really helpful. I'm glad that that's in the plan. Thanks, George.
Lisa?
Oh, something that George and I talked about last week, maybe, and sort of goes to Jesse's comments, are the way that it's going to take time for the pandemic to catch up with the city budget. So we know there are going to be short-term effects, but we also know that probably 3 years from now, when everybody else in the world has moved on and the masks are gone, this is a distant memory. For the city, it will become real, because that's when you've seen the point where the tax breaks, or the appeals have been given, the revenue slows down. So it's going to be a delayed effect as well as an immediate effect. And I think the better the public understands that, and the better the council understands that, the better equipped we are to go forward.
Absolutely. Very, very good points. And, just to even touch on that subject, we talk about deferred maintenance. And we talk about, when you talk about the parking fund, you talk about those structures, you talk about things that were planned for, but that now aren't really a possibility. And whether it's this year, next year, or the year after that, those are things that we're going to see coming back. So agree fully with both Councilmember Babcock and the Mayor Pro Tem statement. I definitely think that's a priority that we want to see. Go ahead, Dana.
See, my unmute button stopped working. The suggestions box, is that active right now?
On the PBB.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
Who receives those? Will we see those?
Right now, those are being sent to the PBB super users, which are myself and Audrey and Justin in finance, as well as Nicole Mosteller in the city manager's department.
So will we see them at some point, or?
So I'll just say to date, we've only gotten one, and that was last year. So I'm assuming we can compile them and provide that to you if that's what you would like.
Yeah, and there were a lot of great spots for suggestions, and I noticed some asked for name and email, and others just let you make a suggestion. But yeah, I mean, if people are saying stuff, I'd love to see what it is they're saying. And speaking of the site, do we vet it through some type of service to see if it's user friendly for people who are visually impaired?
The accessibility of it. So it's a hosted site from us, so I can check into the accessibility. It should be accessible, but I will check into it, the functionality of that.
I know I talk about probably my vision more than anybody does. And I don't need to, I have to enlarge my screen is all I'm saying. And I know that I'm not alone in fonts sometimes just being too tiny. And so I'm just curious, because there's a lot of tiny fonts on the site. All right, so my other question is, are we able to get an understanding of who percentage of staff in the groups, the different departments that are at minimum wage?
Oh yeah, we can provide all that as a part of the budget process, the wage stratification of people. We can run a report on that. I think that generally speaking, that would be our contingent employees that are the lifeguards or the customer service associates who work at the aquatic center would probably be the only ones who would be near minimum wage. Generally, we pay above that, or in the child care employees. Generally, that would be about it, I think. But we can provide that information.
In each budget work session, is that everybody each time?
Explain.
I think she means every department head. And I believe the answer to that question would be no, but I can defer to city manager.
Yeah, so for each budget work session, we're going to break it out. First, we lead off with the general fund, and all the different funds have a session. So if there's areas that you want to hear from in specific or hear more about, we can certainly focus or emphasize those areas.
Okay. My last question is just if the library millage doesn't go through, what happens?
That would be bad news. But obviously, we're hoping that the residents are supportive of the library millage. They were supportive significantly last time, so we're going to have to make sure to educate people on the huge value that provides. But we would have to make some tough decisions.
It would be less than half of what it is now.
Yeah.
The budget.
Yeah, the budget would be, but also the library would be too.
Okay.
So there would, I think there might be 2 employees.
Because
It's one of them.
as Kristen mentioned, one mill is approvable by council, and then 1 mill is approved by the voters and needs to be renewed.
Okay.
So you have the right to levy the 1 mill automatically. It's that second mill that we would need to go to the voters and hear their preference.
Okay. Thank you.
And my suggestion is that we go before November of 2022, so that if it doesn't go through, we have November to put it back on the ballot.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And other folks, just again, encouraging council members, ask questions via email and continue to do that. Even if you don't have the questions formed right now, a lot of information just got thrown at us. So just continue to do that. We have a few months in this, so this is just the start of this. Any other comments, questions? But again, feel free to ask them here.
This is going to be my first time going through this from start to finish, and weirdly, I'm kind of excited about it.
It's an important process. It's your most important process, I think. But
Yes, agreed 100%.
Kind of dreading it, but also kind of excited about it.
well, the PBB, I think, really makes it a much more usable tool than just pouring through a 200-page document. It just puts it in a different way. So that plus the budget document plus the work sessions all together hopefully just give you a better, more tools to look at it different ways. So
Great.
I'm excited about it.
George, do we have the schedule for what those work sessions are going to involve yet? The different funds?
We can email you the detail schedule that has the funds on there.
Okay.
I thought we might have shared that, but perhaps we didn't. So we have one that we prepare every year. It's a full page. This was just a slightly abbreviated, so I could put it on one slide. So we'll get that to you tonight or tomorrow, the 2022 fiscal year thing that has the funds on there.
Great. And then if possible, can we put that also on the city's website, that schedule of the budget process, just to make sure that folks are aware that if they want to give input on specific funds during a council meeting, those are going to be the times when we're going to be discussing them?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And then if we can send to shared networks like Council of Neighborhood Presidents, other areas, that would be good as well. So
Great.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Are there any other questions, comments? All right. Seeing none, that was our last item on the agenda. We will see everybody very, very soon. Thanks for sticking with us. Thanks to all the staff that stayed on.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.